Oh, yeah. I feel like it starts off.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, and welcome to our May 9th Board Business Meeting. Welcome to our board members, MCPS staff, and members of our community who are joining us here today, and those who are watching this meeting via live stream. Now let us begin by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will call the roll to recognize board members to establish that we have a quorum. Mr. Said?
Hello, everybody. Sami Said, student member of the board. And I said it earlier when we were going to closed session, but I'll say it again now. This is a historic moment, as I believe this will be our last board meeting in this space here at Carver, which, as we all know, is a historic space. And so it's incredibly exciting. I think it is a new chapter for the entire system. And so I just want to kind of honor all the history that's happened in this room and congratulate us on us moving forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shebra Evans, District 4.
Good, this afternoon, right? Good afternoon. Rebecca Swandrowski, District 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lynn Harris, I use she, her pronouns, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brenda Wolf, District 5.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. Grace Rivera Oven, representing District 1.
Good afternoon, Julie Yang, District 3. It's good to have all of you here.
And I'm Carla Sylvester, President of the Board. Now we can begin the meeting with the approval of the agenda. Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, our Human Resources and Development Report. Dr. Felder?
Yes. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Two appointments.
I'm sorry. I skipped 3.1.
Oh, okay.
Can I get a motion to move the monthly report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Okay, Dr. Felder.
Okay. Good afternoon again, everyone. Two appointments today. First will be Mr. Craig S. Muser, Legal Director, Office of the General Counsel. He's not attending today, but Mr. Muser brings to Montgomery County Public Schools more than 31 years of legal and educational experience. He looks forward to joining the Office of the General Counsel to support the interests of Montgomery County Public Schools.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous.
The next appointment would be Mr. John T. Garrett, Supervisor, Department of Technology, Innovation, Modernization, and Management, Office of the Strategic Initiatives, Office of the Chief of Staff. Joining him today is his wife, Jennifer, his daughter, Ella, and son, Isaac. Mr. Garrett has been employed by MCPS as an IT systems specialist and most recently as IT systems engineer, Department of Digital Innovation, Modernization, and Management. Mr. Garrett is committed to advancing the department's mission by proactively leading and strengthening initiatives to implement cutting-edge technology in schools and communities, ensuring it aligns seamlessly with system-wide requirements. Shout outs to his son, Samson, who had an important test today that he could not miss.
Good for him. Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, recognitions.
Okay, so whereas the superintendent's annual Mark Mann Excellence in Harmony Award was established in 1991 to honor the highest qualities and most significant accomplishments of the late Dr. Mark Mann, former principal of Parkland Junior High School, And whereas the award is presented annually to a Montgomery County Public Schools administrator who has shown exceptional performance in promoting academic excellence, positive human relations, and community outreach. And whereas Mrs. April D. Longus, principal of Farmland Elementary School, is selected as the recipient of the 2024 Mark Mann Excellence in Harmony Award for her dedication to providing a challenging academic program for every student. And whereas Ms. Longus is a compassionate leader who embodies a standard of academic excellence that goes beyond conventional metrics, leaving an indelible mark on the educational experience of all students. She believes in each and every student's ability to succeed and ensures that each student receives personalized attention to maximize their academic growth. And whereas Ms. Longus is committed to understanding the diverse cultures of the Farmland Elementary School community, she has created an environment of trust, safety, and respect between the staff and families of Farmland Elementary School to support the development of a true collaborative community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and Interim Superintendent of Schools congratulate Mrs. April D. Longus on her accomplishments and on receiving the 2024 Mark Mann Excellence in Harmony Award.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous.
Madam President, can I just make one quick comment? While we don't have a formal resolution for it, I did want to go ahead and recognize and honor Holocaust Remembrance Day, which, was Sunday and Monday, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mandrowski. Okay, we are now moving on to agenda item number 5, public comments. Public comments is one of the opportunities to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. Board members will take your comments into consideration, but it is not our practice to take action at this time on issues that are raised. We encourage public input on policy, program, and practices. This is not the proper avenue to address specific student or employee matters, so we encourage everyone to utilize existing avenues of redress for complaints. This is a public meeting, and we expect the conduct of all speakers and members of the audience to be within the bounds of proper etiquette. Inappropriate personal remarks, rude retorts, or other such behavior is out of order and will not be tolerated. Those who demonstrate disruptive or disrespectful behavior during public comments may be asked to leave the room. Please check our website for information about upcoming board meetings, hearings, and work sessions, including any changes to our meeting start times. We have 14 people signed up to provide in-person testimony. Each speaker will receive 2 minutes for comments. When your name is called, please approach the table, speak clearly and directly into the microphone. 30 seconds prior to the expiration of a speaker's time, a yellow light will go on, accompanied by a beep. A red light and a buzzer signals that your time has expired. Please push the flat button below the microphone to turn it on and begin speaking. Push the same button once more at the sound of the buzzer to turn it off. In addition to our in-person speakers today, we have 5 people signed up to provide video testimonies. We will play these submissions once the in-person testimonies have concluded. Copies of testimonies can be found on our website in board docs, where they are posted with the other materials for this meeting. So let us begin with our first 3 speakers. If I could have Aditya Paravagat, Diya Arunkumar, and Sena Girish Rao. Please come forward.
Laura decided to leave, so she's not here, but Melissa Stein's going to be this person now.
Okay. Okay, and please introduce yourself so that we get your pronunciation of your names correct.
Hi, my name is.
Push your microphone. There you go.
Hi, my name is Aditya Paravangat.
Oh, you can do just one at a time. Do your first. You can do you together or separate?
Separate.
Okay, you go first.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Education. My name is Aditya Paravangat, and I'm a sophomore at Northwest High School. Today, I'm here to talk about offering high school science courses with credit to middle schools. Throughout my years at Roberto Clemente Middle School, I noticed that the available science classes were not academically rigorous. However, at Northwest High School, the science courses available, such as honors biology and honors chemistry, offer new topics that require no prior knowledge. These are the types of classes that should be offered in middle schools. MCPS already does with math, technology, and foreign language courses, where taking these classes in middle school will count at least half a credit in high school. By building a strong foundation in middle school, students can take AP science classes in high school. According to the Brookings Institute, AP benefits students by increasing their college entry and degree attainment, decreasing time to degree, and improving earnings. Now, more than ever, it's important to introduce rigorous STEM coursework in middle school that fosters early interest and proficiency in STEM fields, preparing students for future academic and career success. In the recent MCAP Grade 8 science assessments, results have shown that MCPS students have achieved higher levels of science scores across the board, with proficiency levels of 33.7% and 45% compared to statewide data. Our students are more than capable of handling more advanced high school courses in middle schools and benefit greatly from doing so. Members of the Board of Education, I ask you to consider implementing high school level science classes in middle school for credit. Thank you.
Thank you. You may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Education. My name is Dia Arun Kumar, and I am a junior at Northwest High School. Today, I am here to discuss the lack of diversity and equitable opportunities in science-related STEM courses offered in MCPS high schools. The high school STEM curriculum should be expanded to include a variety of science courses. Currently, most schools in the county only offer a limited number of science courses. My middle school, Kingsview, only offered prerequisite general science classes. My high school, Northwest, offers a wider variety of AP and honors science classes, yet these are still limited to courses including the fundamentals of biology, chemistry, and physics. Aspiring medical students like myself understand the need for more in-depth science courses, such as microbiology and organic chemistry. Organic chemistry, often known as the weed-out class for pre-medical students, would be beneficial to strengthen many students' commitment to pursuing a career in the medical field. A study by Sage Journals finds that taking advanced STEM courses in high school enabled students to succeed later in college as it increased college readiness. With the rise of STEM-focused careers, it has become increasingly vital to equip students with a secure knowledge of science-related subjects. Members of the Board of Education, the high school science curriculum needs to be accommodated to a wider variety of courses. By doing so, we can empower the next generation of scientists, innovators, and problem solvers to make a positive impact on the world.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Education. My name is Sana Girish Rao, and I'm a junior at Northwest High School. I stand before you today as a member of the Northwest Student Advocacy Club and a co-founder of Future Tech Horizons, an organization dedicated to expanding technology and computer science education globally. I'm here today to address the current disparity in middle school technology courses that offer credit transfer to MCPS high schools. In an age where technology is increasingly vital in society, it's imperative that we integrate technology-based courses in middle school. Many middle school students across MCPS do not have access to a technology class that offers high school credit. According to the 2024-2025 MCPS Middle School Course Bulletin, limited schools are able to offer technology education credit-bearing courses such as website development and foundations of computer science. This leaves many students at a disadvantage, as not as all middle schools provide the opportunity for students to gain the credits necessary for high school graduation. Ensuring access to these courses in all middle schools is crucial, as it allows students to have equitable access to completing their tech requirements early on. Furthermore, introducing advanced tech courses at this level best prepares students for more advanced courses in high school, such as AP courses. Our neighboring county, Howard County, according to their middle school course catalog, requires students to receive career and technical education instruction in areas of study that include technology comprehension in middle school, best preparing students for high school. Members of the Board of Education, I ask that we strive to provide equitable access to all technology courses in MCPS for students in middle school, so all students can be best prepared for high school. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could get our next three speakers to please come forward. Naomi Landman, Mira Hoffman, and Maylise Zorabara. Naomi, please turn on your microphone, or somebody. Naomi?
Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Landman, and I'm a fourth grader at Farmland Elementary School. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. Music and acting are my life. I play the piano, guitar, and am currently taking viola through the incredible instrumental music program at my school. We perform now in our school cafeteria, and the middle schoolers do the same. I'm here to tell you, sing, about how much I care that our high school has an auditorium for all of us to share. This song is called Common Ground. The high school needs an auditorium so we can perform. A high school with an auditorium is the norm. We need an auditorium to bring us together. Athletes have their space, the arts need a place. Theater helps our young voices rise. It helps us express our feelings through song, not just eyes. Listen, hear my battle cry. Don't tear our opinions down. Music is our common ground. I'm gonna go to Woodward one day. Not to be selfish, but if I may say, if we build it, I'll be in there every day. Acting with a smile on my face. Please don't tear our opinions down. Music is our common ground. We need a big, beautiful stage, lights to highlight our faces, raked seating so everyone can see, including my grandma taking pictures of me, curtains that rise, the arts keep us alive, yes they do. I think we should build an auditorium, how about you?
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. Now we're going to have Mira. You're together. Okay, so we'll adjust the time. Or still 2 minutes? Okay. All right, Mira and Maylise, please.
Hi, my name is Mira Hoffman, and I go to Farmland Elementary School.
My name is Maylise Zumbara, and I go to Gare Park Elementary School.
As two fifth-grade students who are very likely to end up as the first class of the New Woodward High School, we think it's very important that our school will have an auditorium.
Both of us attended the Next Generationship Leadership Day at Wheaton High School, and they told us we should try to make a difference in the world and help the community. We'll be doing that by asking for an auditorium.
Our first reason for having an auditorium is because both of us and lots of people in the community participate in dance, theater, chorus, and instrumental music. These are important to many students who are creative and enjoy extracurricular activities. These activities require an auditorium for performances.
Another reason is a lot of elementary and middle schools need auditoriums from high schools to do promotions, concerts, presentations, meetings, and other group activities. It's already very hard to find a time and a place to schedule events like this, so Woodward would need an auditorium to help with events.
In conclusion, we think the Board of Education should make sure that an auditorium is built at Woodward now.
Thank you for letting us present our thoughts and ideas to you.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you. If we could get our next three speakers to please come forward. Emma Latner, Jorge Najera Virula, and Rajat Singh.
Good afternoon. My name is Emma Latner, and I'm in the 5th grade at Farmland Elementary School. I'm here to talk about your plan for building Woodward High School. While I understand that the MCPS Board of Education has recently decided to postpone building an auditorium, I strongly believe you should reconsider this decision. An auditorium is essential for a school like Woodward High School. It's a place where students can come together for important events like pep rallies, assemblies, and town halls. However, what concerns me the most is the impact this decision will have on the performing arts program at Woodward. An auditorium would provide a space for chorus, orchestra, and band concerts, as well as theater performances. These programs are great for students to connect, build new friendships, and showcase their talents. In addition, many future students, including myself, may want to pursue performing arts past college, and that opportunity will be taken away from them with no auditorium. Furthermore, the decision not to build an auditorium will impact the students coming from Northwood, who will not have the same opportunities as their peers. MCPS says they are committed to promoting inclusivity and ensuring equal access to education for all students. Denying the students at Woodward High School an auditorium would go against this principle. Finally, it's worth noting that all other MCPS high schools have an auditorium. It would be unfair to deny the students at Woodward High School the same opportunities as their peers at other schools. I ask you to reconsider this decision and provide the students at Woodward High School with an auditorium as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jorge, you may begin.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is my story in CREA. My name is Jorge Nájera Virula, and I'm from Guatemala. I am part of the CREA family. I can say that I feel very proud and grateful to belong to this program that for many of my classmates has been a light of hope and a bridge to continue fighting for our dreams and goals. Since for many of us as immigrants, sometimes without financial support, it is challenging to continue studying because we have to work during the day to survive. 2 years ago, I arrived in the country and felt sad and desolate. I thought I could not study because I had to work, but I remember someone told me about CREA, a program that provides classes from 6 to 9 p.m. and immediately registered. The moment I entered CREA, I knew that I could fulfill my goal of attending college and one day become a teacher. CREA helps many students graduate, and this year I will graduate. I'm very happy and proud of that. Now I am here representing the CREA family, thanking each person who makes it possible for this program to function. Each day we give our best effort to learn despite working a full day, and that is one way that we can show how thankful we are to our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajdeep Singh, and I am from India. I'm a student at CREA Night. I started attending CREA on October 9, 2023. I came to CREA because I could not get all of my credits in time so far. I have passed 2 subjects on the GED. I'm also in a cooking class and got my Safe Serve certificate, which has helped me at my restaurant job. I'm very happy in CREA. Everybody is so friendly. That's why I feel comfortable. CREA is a family. My teachers help me learn different subjects and give good life advice. CREA has all Spanish speakers, and at first I was nervous. But now I can talk with them without a problem, and I have also learned words in Spanish. We have so much fun at CREA. This year we had an international night holiday party, soccer tournament, and we went to Sky Zone. During international night, everyone brought food from their countries. There were games and dancing. I cooked chicken biryani and everybody loved it. I love CREA and I am working hard to pass the last 2 exams and get my GED. I am also really excited about our graduation party on June 13th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Come see us when you get your teacher.
If we could get our next 3 speakers to come forward. Jennifer Martin, Cristel Figueroa, and we have an interpreter, I think, joining us as well. Oh. Ms. Martin, you may begin.
First, I would like to extend my very best wishes to all my colleagues in MCEA as we celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. I know how busy you are, but I hope you take a moment to see the video I sent you Tuesday. I meant every word I said. You're changing lives every day. Yesterday, Ms. Silvestri, you endured a grueling experience as a guest of the House Subcommittee on Early Childhood, Elementary, and Secondary Education. You acquitted yourself with dignity and spoke forthrightly about our efforts to create a safe and welcoming school community for all. Thank you. While Ms. Silvestri was engaged on Capitol Hill, Dr. Felder, Ms. Rivera-Oven, Ms. Wolf, Ms. Spandrowski, and Ms. Yang joined me at Kennedy High School to hear from staff and students about the safety crisis they're facing. This, too, was a difficult meeting, and we thank you for heeding the concerns, frustrations, and fears that staff and students expressed. MCA applauds you for making it a priority to join us at Kennedy yesterday. Your attendance and remarks signaled to staff that you'll revise policies to restore the guardrails students need to protect them from bad choices, and that you'll address the staffing and building problems so that safety can be restored. There's clearly a new tone and attentiveness under Dr. Felder's leadership as interim superintendent. She's establishing an open and positive relationship with our union to make necessary improvements in teaching and learning conditions. She shows true respect, sympathy, and consideration for the folks who work with our students each day. We're gratified to see her taking immediate action to address problems, and we hope that the system continues on the path her leadership is creating. On this Teacher Appreciation Week, committing to these changes will be the best way to honor educators for our dedication and service. Thank you.
Thank you. Cristel?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cristel Figueroa y tengo dos hijos en MCPS. Mi hija Cristel va en 7º grado e Isabel va en kindergarten. El día de hoy vengo a contarles la necesidad que existe en crear una alerta temprana para lectura y matemáticas con planes de éxito individualizados para estudiantes que se están quedando atrás del nivel de grado en estos temas. En la primaria estaba Cristel muy bien en todas sus materias, pero al llegar a la escuela intermedia nos dimos cuenta de que necesitaba mucha ayuda en matemáticas. No tuvimos éxito en la búsqueda de asistencia para apoyarla, pues no podemos pagar tutoría, y como consecuencia se ha apagado el deseo de aprender. Pedimos ayuda de la escuela para que le dieran más apoyo, pero no tuvimos suerte. Yo, como toda madre, he intentado ayudarla con su trabajo de matemáticas, pero es distinto a los métodos que utilizamos en nuestros países y en la época que yo iba a la escuela. Es por eso que hoy estoy aquí, porque sé que como mi hija hay muchos estudiantes en MCPS, es importante que desarrollemos herramientas que ponen al padre y estudiante en alerta cuando necesitan más ayuda y generalizar este conocimiento para mejorar la competencia en matemáticas como en la lectura. Nosotros los padres queremos poner de nuestra parte, pero si no hay claras maneras de saber que nuestros hijos necesitan intervenciones, entonces no podemos poner lo mejor de nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, señora Figueroa.
Good afternoon. My name is Cristel Figueroa, and I have 2 children in MCPS. My daughter, Cristel, is in the 7th grade, and Isabel is in kindergarten. Today, I am here to tell you about the need to create an early warning for reading and mathematics with individualized success plans for students who are failing behind grade level in these subjects. In elementary school, Cristel was very good in all of her subjects, but when we got to middle school, we realized that she needed a lot of help in mathematics. We were not able to find assistance to help her. We cannot pay for tutoring, and as a consequence, her desire to learn has gone out. We asked the school for help to give her more support, but we had no luck. Like any mother, I have tried to help her with her math assignments, but the methods are different than the ones we use in our countries and different from the times I used to go to school. That is why I am here, because I know that like my daughter, there are many students in MCPS. It is important that we develop tools that put the parent and student on alert when they need more help and generalize this knowledge to improve proficiency in mathematics as well as reading. We, the parents, want to do our part, but if there are no clear ways to know that our children need interventions, then we cannot do our best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Could get our next three speakers to please come forward. Samira Hussein, Dorijan Hoffman, and Banish Mustafa. You may begin.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samira Hussein. I'm a community advocate. At April 11 board meeting, an MCPS staff made accusations against the Muslim Students Association, the MSA. As an advocate, I would like to do some clearing of some of the points that she made. The speaker referred to this beautiful kufiya scarf as a symbol of uprising and equated it to modern-day swastika. Her words were meant to instill fear and dehumanize Palestinians, such as myself. Such false information by an MCPS educator is very threatening and raises security concerns to all students and brings shame to the education system. Educators are responsible for educating and not harming the identity of students. What kind of discipline have this staff received? Yeah, you knew about it when she did the testimony on the 11th. Kufiya is known as hatta or shmag, is an article of clothing that the men of Palestine wore to protect themselves from the sun's heat. All men in my family wore it and still wearing this kufiya. It is a cultural and represents the heritage. It is also used as a symbol of justice and freedom of oppression, not as the speaker described it and equated it with the swastika. Currently, people around the world, they wear this with a good conscience and humanity, wear the kufiya to show their solidarity for Palestinians' human rights, especially after being called human animals by so-called leaders and also by some of MCPS staff. They're called murderous animals. The design of the kufiya, as you see, it symbolizes the fish net where the Palestinians did the fishing to feed their families, but unfortunately it's not anymore because of the war. The second part is the lines that symbolizes the trade. And I'll thank you for your time. You have my full testimony.
Thank you. Dorgan?
President Silvestri, Interim Superintendent Felder, and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Dorijan Hoffman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Walter Johnson Cluster of PTAs. I'm here again to express our concerns about the Woodward Auditorium. You've heard today from our next generation of likely Woodward students. They and their classmates are performers, singers, and leaders. They're inspiring, and there are many students who won't discover a love of performing until high school. We want to make sure that all students have this opportunity to perform, not just those who have the resources to pursue the arts outside of school. We know that MCPS has said the auditorium will be built eventually. This is a minor delay. Unfortunately, it is our experience that until we see the item in the budget, we cannot assume that promises will be kept. I am confident that you do want an auditorium built at Woodward, but we are now stuck in the uncomfortable spot of figuring out how and when to add it back in. We are concerned that waiting for amendment to the CIP this fall, finalized in spring 25, will still cause a delay and many opportunities for the project to fall in priority. A one-year delay, which is inevitable with a fall CIP amendment, will mean that Northwood students will be without an auditorium for an additional year or all 3 years they are at Woodward. current ninth graders that selected Northwood as their preferred high school in the DCC to be part of a performing arts program will now be faced with spending the rest of their high school years in a facility that cannot fully accommodate them. Please know that this new plan proposed by MCPS, even if it could likely meet the needs of Woodward students in 2027 and the WJ cluster, will very likely not meet the needs of Northwood at Woodward. An auditorium finished in spring 27 does not give them relief. Our county cannot have a new high school built without these important spaces, and we need it funded now, not to keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you. Benish, you may begin. Yeah.
My name is Binish Mustafa. I am the indigenous people of the United States. My rich heritage and culture was annihilated by the colonists in name of civilization. We were barbarics, human animals. Our women and children were raped, kidnapped, and murdered. I am part of the largest genocide in this world. We now live in parts of this country very limited to natural source resources like water. But something is better than nothing. How dare we, as the indigenous people of this land, choose what part of the land we want? Till this day, Thanksgiving is celebrated. People shed the trail of tears as they purchase their iPhone Pro Max on a Black Friday, our day of mourning, our day of blackness. My name is Binish Mustafa. I'm a Palestinian woman who has lost all members of her family in this war. My family is part of the casualties of war, alongside 40,000 of my people, 70% of which were women and children, all of which are supposed human animals. Our children are being used as human shields, so of course they must die. I am sure America can justify the bombing of an entire school if an active shooter was in it. And if the active shooter used children as human fields, of course, what else could America possibly do? Days ago, thousands of Israeli Jewish protesters went on the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem to accept a ceasefire deal. They held posters saying Rafah, not at the expense of my grandfather, but of course they too must be anti-Semitic. We preach inclusion on one hand, yet emphasize the importance of a completely exclusive state on the other. Faculty of MCPS, if they comment on their personal accounts about these atrocities, it is very clear as to why we should exterminate them. No American citizen of any moral conscience has the right to voice their opinion. But if they ever feel like burning the Quran or mocking or making cartoons of the most famous figure in Islamic faith, all is welcome. Never again means never again for anyone. My name is Binish Mustafa, and I'm human. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final in-person speaker is Melissa Stein. Please come forward. Not till, yeah, there you go.
On? Okay. Hi, I am Melissa Stein. I'm a mother of 3 kids served by MCPS, and I am the granddaughter of 3 Holocaust survivors. As a member of the MCCPTA, which is not who I'm talking for, I am aware that student mental health, student safety, and attendance are 3 of the biggest concerns for the board, and I think for all of us. My daughter is currently doing interim instructional services. In part, her feeling safe at school, unsafe at school started when she heard at Tilden peers defending the social media posts that were lies for sure, because they had pictures and saying that Zionists harvested Palestinian baby organs, which I think we all know is not the case, and called the music festival a media conspiracy. Blood libel and media conspiracies are both pervasive tropes of anti-Semitism, not microaggressions, lies that are tropes of anti-Semitism. So when my daughter heard that being okay, and then she was sitting in history class doing the ADL training, and a boy said, "Hitler didn't kill enough Jews," and he was barely redirected by the teacher, And then I'm finishing up and I'm not getting my point. My point is this, my daughter's not going to school. The kid who was not considered to be a hate bias person from saying those things, my daughter watched her friend go through that. That friend has developed behavior issues. I do not understand how teachers who post lies, and those are not debatably lies, I think even my friends over there would agree that that is not a lie, how my daughter has to know that Montgomery County keeps those people in our school. And I don't care if they know if they do it again, that something could happen to them up to,
Thank you.
Yes, what I'm trying to, thank you. I was angry, sorry. Okay.
We received 5 video testimonies. The first one comes from Susan Karen. Please play the video.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Karen, and I'm a master trainer for the Adverse Childhood Experiences ACEs study. In fact, I trained your social workers in 2022. I'm here today out of concern that because of the congressional hearing yesterday, MCPS will escalate the trainings being done by the Israeli lobby that have been used to censor and suppress students and teachers who express solidarity for Palestinian human rights. One example is the trainings by the Israel American Council, IAC. This is a right-wing organization founded by the late Sheldon Adelson, who is known as the Republican Party's anti-Muslim sugar daddy. To demonstrate how extreme the IAC is, its community advocacy packet asserts that Palestine is not occupied and Israel did not cause a humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Another program, Heart of a Nation, was brought to MCPS and asserts that they present both the Israeli and Palestinian perspective. However, the program is under the auspices of the JCRC, which are registered lobbyists for Israeli interests. I can't emphasize how offensive it is for Palestinian voices to not be able to be expressed directly, but instead needing to go through JCRC sponsorship. As a last note, there is no parity. We recently asked to have just one training at one school and were rebuffed. That training was an ACLU Know Your Rights session. Since July 2023, a coalition has repeatedly asked that these trainings, which employ a weaponized version of anti-Semitism, be paused because they cultivate Palestinian hate. There are several other anti-Semitism trainings that are less agenda-driven and use collective liberation models. I implore you to consider these instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Henry Nichols. Please play the video.
My name is Henry Nichols, and I'm a 10th grader at Northwood High School. It is exciting that Northwood is going to get a new facility in 2027. We absolutely need it. Unfortunately, those of us in the middle of our high school experience at Northwood will have to pay for it. We have to pay with no athletic fields for our junior and senior year of high school. We have to pay with no home games at our home fields for 2 years. We have to pay with no senior nights on our home fields for 2 years. We have to pay with no concessions, which supports our booster clubs, which supports our athletics. We have to pay with no auditorium on our campus for our performing theater arts program. We have to pay with no band concerts or dance concerts or plays or musicals or awarding ceremonies in our home auditorium. This is 2 years, half a high school experience with no facilities. Having a home space, a home field, a home auditorium, a home track, it's where we build community. It's where we cross paths and connect and cheer for each other. It's where we socialize and meet people. This won't happen at Northwood for 2 years when we are busing 7 teams to 7 different fields for practice and sending those same teams to away fields for their games. This will be devastating for our community. This is what's supposed to happen right now. We know we will survive the changes we are facing, but we deserve more than survival. We deserve an opportunity to thrive. The students at Northwood deserve the same support that is provided to every single public high school across Montgomery County in the form of athletic fields and an auditorium on our campus. All we want is for you to keep your promises, which means athletic fields, a track, an auditorium on our campus by summer of 2025. We, the Northwood community, deserves it.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Roseanne Saul. Please play the video.
I'm Roseanne Sa. I work at Northwood High School and live in the DCC. MCPS claims to be an anti-racist school system that uses trauma-informed and restorative justice practices. For more than 200 days, we've witnessed Israeli forces kill 40,000 Palestinians. More than 2 million people have had their homes destroyed, along with their hospitals, their schools, their churches, their mosques, their universities, and any safe spaces they once had, while being intentionally subjected to starvation and lack of medical aid. Not a word of care or support has been offered by MCPS to Palestinian students or staff, some of whose family members have been killed and many who are suffering secondary trauma from seeing live-streamed carnage on a daily basis. Instead, our Palestinian colleagues, students, and sympathetic allies, many of whom are Jewish, have faced discrimination, intimidation, harassment, and suppression for speaking about what many world institutions like the ICJ and the UN are warning is a genocide. I've been heartened to meet many young people who care deeply about what is happening to students like themselves halfway around the world, current students and alum who are working for justice in Palestine despite the risks. Instead of being met with support, they're met with silence, false accusations of anti-Semitism or suppression. I worry about our students' safety, especially our Black and brown students who advocate for Palestine and face racism and often Islamophobia too. I worry because the harassment and aggressions they face are invisible to MCPS because they don't trust the system enough to file the proper forms, so they don't show up in our statistics. But their pain is real, and we should be doing everything we can to nurture them. Staff and students are fearful. No one should have to whisper about Palestine. This is not new, but the suppression has intensified. I've been involved with small groups, not funded organizations with paid staff, of staff, students, families, and community members who for years have met with MCPS officials to express our concerns regarding anti-Palestinian racism and bias to no avail. Safety is not about comfort, it's about real harm. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Jose Luis Rodas Lemos. Please play the video.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Luis Rodas. My nephews are enrolled in the CREA evening program. I am here to testify about the positive experience we had with CREA. My two nephews, Jonathan and Felix, came to the United States in February 2023. Although they wanted to study, they had to leave school for work. For Jonathan, it was the only option he had. He was burdened with the responsibility of helping the family financially. They are very happy in CREA. They feel like they have a second chance because before CREA, it was either work or school. In CREA, they can do both. They go to work every day and then head straight to school. They are happy. They want to learn. They are motivated. I see a light at the end of the tunnel. In the CREA program, they obviously received academic support, English, math, GED preparation, but importantly, they also received emotional and social support. Teachers act as counselors. The school connects us to services, health appointments, food, and community programs. There are many recently arrived kids who are frustrated in normal schools. They face economic hardships and psychological trauma, and they leave. I worry for the youth who don't study. When kids drop out, there is a high possibility that they will get into crime. It's all related to lack of education. There should be an option for students who can't graduate from high school. That's what happened to my nephews, but luckily they can study at CREA and work for a better future. If youth are not educated, they are vulnerable to exploitation, to working in a job that has no potential for growth, or to get involved in crime. My nephews have to educate themselves. They are the future of this country.
Thank you. Our final video testimony comes from Jack Volmerhausen. Please play the video.
My name is Jack Volmerhausen, and I'm currently a sophomore at Northwood High School. I'll be attending Woodward in North Bethesda for my junior and senior years while Northwood undergoes a long overdue renovation. Recently, I found out that Woodward won't have athletic fields or an auditorium for at least 2 years, which means that my classmates and I won't have a chance to compete or perform in our actual schools for the rest of my high school years. In my first 2 years at Northwood, I've run track and cross country, played tennis, and played guitar in Northwood's orchestra for Northwood's theater program. Some of my most important friendships were formed, and some of my fondest memories have been had on Northwood's track and tennis courts. I also had an amazing experience on stage playing guitar during Northwood's most recent production of Grease. This graphic is used by MCPS to explain the difference between reality, equity, equality, and justice. It's a nice lesson, but it's disappointing when it isn't put into practice. Northwood students and teachers are being forced to attend a school that won't have an auditorium, athletic fields, or track for 2 years. This will definitely hurt and in some instances kill a significant number of Northwood's programs that are just starting to find a sense of pride and community. Would this happen in schools with a higher median income in other parts of the county, like Churchill, Whitman, or BCC? I'm positive it would not. Please build our fields and auditorium as planned. We deserve equity, just like you taught us. Thank you.
Thank you. This will conclude our public comments. And let me note again, for those that missed the start of the meeting, that this is our last meeting here at the historic Carver Educational Service Center. Our next meeting will be held at our new meeting space at 15 West Goody Drive. We look forward to engaging in the public's work in our new space. And with that, the next business meeting of the Board of Education for public comment is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. Sign-ups for public comment will open on Thursday, May 16th, 2024 at 6 p.m. In addition to the online sign-ups for public comment, we allow for in-person, same-day sign-ups when space allows. Unallocated slots may be filled on a first-come, first-served basis on the day of the meeting. In order to sign up in person, please arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before the start of the open session and sign the form. In-person signups will close 15 minutes before the public comment begins or when all slots are filled. And with that, I will turn to my colleagues to see if there are any comments or questions. Mrs. Wolf.
First, I wanted to thank our elementary school students who came and spoke out about their needs. I want you to know that my grandson would agree with you that the music program is very important, and he would want you to have that auditorium. I also wanted to thank Ms. Figueroa for mentioning the early warning system. That is something that we've been talking about in the strategic planning committee. It's a little behind schedule, but we do hope to get it up and running. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, by September.
Yes. So right now, what we're working on is a K through 3 literacy plan. We're starting with K through 3, and we're not calling it an early warning system, but we're talking about how are we more effectively communicating with families about their current progress and need.
Can I say that in Spanish for Ms. Figueroa?
Yes. Sure.
Okay. Señora Figueroa, queremos dar las gracias por su testimonio. Queremos dejarle saber que estamos trabajando en un proceso para poder entonces advertir a los padres de familia que se les va a dar una notificación. Eso lo vamos a implementar más o menos en septiembre y está casi listo, porque hemos escuchado a usted y otros papás de ese problema que existe para poder ayudar a sus hijos. Así que queríamos dejarles saber.
Thank you for that, Grace. I also wanted to thank Jennifer Martin for coming and inviting us yesterday to go with you to Kennedy. It was very enlightening. You know, when we had the safety and security presentation, we know that there's a lot of work to be done, and yesterday's discussion confirmed that there are some things that we need to think about and that the staff has some very good ideas about what needs to be done. So we will be in touch further about that. Thank you.
Ms. Yang.
Yes, I associate myself with the comment of Ms. Wolf. Yes, I have a question. Maybe this is something I want to request from our staff. You don't have to let me know now. Our student testified, Sana Rao, Ms. Rao testified that there are some middle school have technology classes that's credit transfer, that has credit that's transferable to high school credits, but other schools don't have that. I would like to have a list to understand where these credit transferable classes are offered, where they're not offered. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Rivera-Oven.
I just want to say that for our last meeting here, this is going to be a very memorable meeting with our young people who came to discuss to you, Emma, and to your young colleagues, Mira and Melis, I think is how you say it, Melis, okay. You know, it just fills me with pride and joy to know that we are doing things well with young people like yourselves. And we hope the same thing. And we also heard the other young people that I know they're hurting, especially our junior and seniors who are not probably going to have the full experience. So we hope that you are going to do that. But it's, you know, you guys are going to be just fine because you have a great voice and you're a great advocates. So I want to say thank you to you guys. I want to also talk a little bit to the students from CREA. I had, you know, the honor of being there with some of my other colleagues, with Mrs. Evans, Ms. Sylvester, and Mrs. Wolf. Was it a week ago? It seems like months ago. There's so much going on. But and we met some of you. You know, I know you're an incredible cook, and I wish you all the best. And Jorge, and I'm just moved by the students at CREA because they have such a heavy lifting, more than your usual students, right? They have to put food on the table. They come with a lot of trauma, many of them. I was so moved by some of the students who they drive from Ocean City. This is how much they value education. They drive from Ocean City almost every day to be able to go to class so they can get a GED. And I want this to be an example to other students in our system who sometimes take schooling for granted and they don't come to school when they can actually come to school full time and they decide not to. To look at the example of the kids from CREA, the young people from CREA who do everything in their power to try to get a high school diploma or a certificate so they can have a better life. We value that, and I know that Dr. Felder and I know the system values that. And we are looking into making sure that CREA is enhanced and not cut to be able to keep supporting young people like yourselves. So muchas gracias por el testimonio que diste, Jorge. And 2 years and your English is wonderful. Really, I think that's a testament to how hard you're working. Ese es testimonio de tu trabajo. Y yo te doy muchas gracias por haber venido, because I know you probably took time off from work to come and advocate for your other colleagues and for the other students at CREA. So gracias por estar aquí, por hacer ese sacrificio. And I just, you know, when I said with the sciences, again, young people, you know, always surprises us, but they are so eloquent and they know what we need. And for them to say that we need to be having these classes in middle school, I'm sure staff is looking into it. I know I heard them say that Howard County offers some of these courses, and I think it's worth looking into it. And I just want to say thank you for their testimony, and to all those parents who came to advocate here today for their safety, for their well-being of their kids. You're not just speaking for yourself, but you're speaking for other kids as well, and other parents who cannot take time off from work to be here. So thank you, and appreciate everyone's testimony.
And just if we make sure I'm more understanding correct, and I think that some of the testimony brought it up about the Woodward Auditorium. We have communicated to the affected families that it is our intent to work with our county council, which are our funders, so that we can hopefully reinstate funding so that the auditorium could go back to its planned schedule. Is that correct?
That is correct. So originally the auditorium was scheduled to be completed in the summer of 2025. Our plan, in talking with county council members who, to your point, President Silvestre, are the ones who fund us or don't, is to get that into the off-year amendment, and then the completion date would be the summer of 2026. So we are moving expeditiously to get that done, and certainly appreciate the testimony today, and we are doing everything we can to move that quickly as forward as possible. As quickly as possible.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other lights on, we will move on to agenda item number 6, consent items. Board members, do you have any consent items that you would like to pull? Okay, seeing none, if I could get a motion to move 6-1 through 6-10 in block.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Item number 7, we are having, our presentation for today is an oral discussion on chronic absenteeism. We'll just let folks transition in and transition out. As my colleagues all know, that we have been struggling with chronic absenteeism in this school district, as have other school systems across the country. We need our students in the classroom so that they can learn from our talented educators, from our great curriculum. And so this is a very important topic for us and the success of our students. So with that, I pass it on to Dr. Felder.
Thank you, President Silvestri. So throughout the school year, we have channeled significant efforts towards encouraging the regular attendance of all students. We know that students who regularly attend school cultivate social relationships and social skills. They broaden their future opportunities and develop the skills necessary to thrive in college, career, and community. We continue to face the direct and indirect challenges related to the perceived importance of daily in-school attendance brought about by the COVID pandemic. Through our comprehensive attendance action plan, we are addressing attendance challenges by working collaboratively with our staff, parents, and community members. While there is still work to be done, we have engaged in proactive measures to improve attendance rates across the district and have sharpened data-driven responsive attendance interventions. The data staff will share today will demonstrate the positive impact of our attendance action plan. While the improvements in attendance rates have not been consistent across all school levels, they are a clear indication of the plan's effectiveness. Today, staff will discuss the comprehensive support that has been implemented to address attendance concerns at both the student group and individual family levels. Staff will highlight the recent improvements in the availability of real-time attendance data and parent notifications. Additionally, staff will explore strategies to incentivize high school students to attend every class every day throughout the entire school year. Again, while we acknowledge the progress, we also acknowledge that there's still work to be done, but we are committed to exploring innovative approaches to addressing this complex issue. So at this time, I invite Mr. Monteleone to introduce his team and begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Felder, and greetings, President Silvestre, Vice President Harris, who just left the room, and clearly members of the board. I am Damon Monteleone, one of the Associate Superintendents in School Support and Wellbeing, and I'm joined by Mr. Steve Neff, Director of People, Personnel, and Attendance Services. And we are grateful to have this opportunity to engage in this conversation around the work that we have done this year to address chronic absenteeism, to provide that update on the current state and to preview what is on the horizon. And I really just want to underscore what Dr. Felder said. This is very much a work in progress. We have taken key initial steps that have laid a foundation, but there is much work to do for sure. I guess can we get the slides up, comms, for this?
And while we're waiting for the slides to come up, also joining us at the table is Dr. Peter Moran, Chief of Schools.
Okay, so we can go on to the next slide. Okay. So what you see on your screens here, all together now, in school together, learn together, achieve together. This has been really the theme of our campaign since August. We stood in the CESE auditorium at that time and shared our work that was in front of us and the approach that we would take, and we're happy to come back here in May to speak to this. We engaged in this campaign in partnership with comms and folks in the television office and through multiple videos, social media posts, ongoing things to know, community messaging, in addition to the work that we've done through our partners with Attendance Works in elementary schools, with our community schools, with our principals and school leaders. And really the campaign is centered around a key theme, right? That it's going to take all of us, certainly schools, staff, central office staff, but also parents, students, teachers, wellness professionals in schools. In addition, we need the help of our community partners, and we need the help of our parents to address this issue. The culture around attendance has shifted since the pandemic, and we know that schools can't do this alone. Like many of the issues that we are facing in our schools today, there are societal determinants that influence these issues, right? We are a mirror of society, and so it truly is a societal effort. Next slide, please. As we engage in any complex work like this, it's important to note that we speak from our core values. And really, in the spirit of collaboration, attendance is truly about relationships. If the teacher and the student have a great relationship in the classroom, the student is more likely to come. If the principal is fostering an atmosphere in a school that is inclusive, that is tolerant, where students see themselves in the halls, where they're represented in the curriculum, where they are celebrated, students are more likely to come, right? If we have good relationships with our parents and understand the reality of what they're facing in their lives, and we are doing everything at our disposal to support them, they are more likely to work with us to get their kids into school. If we have great relationships with our partners at County Council, with our partners at Health and Human Services, then we are more likely, clearly, to be able to support our families in a comprehensive way. So I just want to reiterate this, that this is truly about relationships, and a lot of the work that we need to do to improve attendance is rooted in relationships. Next slide. So I think it's important that we kind of level set some definitions here. And so, you know, when I was coming up through school, the word was truancy. Are you truant? And my grandfather used to tell me stories about how in Baltimore City in the early 20th century, how the truant officers would go through the city and sweep up the kids who were running numbers, right, and things like that. We don't have truant officers anymore, right? But we still have this word truancy that is used. And so we truly need to define this. So, you know, if you are truant, you are a student who is absent, and you are unexcused for that absence. So truancy is a data point where you are absent unexcused for 20% or more of the days that you are enrolled. Unexcused absences. Chronically absent. The term chronically absent means any student who misses 10% or more of the days they are enrolled, regardless of the reason, excused or unexcused. So this is 18 or more days absent in a school year, approximately 2 days absent per month from September to June. So if you are absent, excused or unexcused, once every other week, you potentially would be chronically absent for the school year. So why do we focus on chronically absent, or the chronic absenteeism data point, as opposed to truancy, or as opposed to just unexcused absences? Because chronic absenteeism and that data point is used by the Maryland State Department of Education. It is the data point that is used by the federal government, and is the data point that that we are assessed by for the state with our school report cards, and then collectively as a district. So it is a key metric that we are monitoring through our school improvement plans, and we'll speak to a little bit more on that later. Next slide, please. So like a lot of the issues that we're facing, we are not facing them alone. We are not the only school district facing the issue of chronic absenteeism. This certainly is a national issue and has received national headlines over the last couple of years. The data from 21-22, which is the latest data that we have available, suggests that chronic absenteeism rates have doubled compared to pre-pandemic. In the United States, currently, 1 in 3 students is chronically absent. Okay, again, excused or unexcused. And we know through our partnership with Attendance Works, a national expert on attendance, and according to the research, absenteeism in the first month of school can predict poor attendance throughout the school year. 50% of students who miss 2 to 4 days in September will ultimately miss a month or more of school. And that is data that we've shared with our principals. That is data that we monitor right out of the gate in the school year that sets our agenda for the rest of the year. And we also know that poor attendance can influence whether a student reads proficiently by the end of third grade. And this is aligned with the work that our school system and our partners in curriculum and the Chief Academic Officer's Office are doing around the pathways to student success and third grade literacy. We also know by sixth grade, chronic absenteeism becomes the leading indicator for whether or not a student will graduate from school. Again, if you are chronically absent in sixth grade, that is the leading indicator as to whether or not you will graduate from high school. And like many of the things that we are dealing with, this falls most heavily on our most impacted families and students. Whether that is, those are families that have traditionally been underserved by the school system or this country, or families that are impacted by poverty or economic conditions. Next slide, please. All right, so why is this? Why has the culture shifted? I mean, we were all part of this, right? During the pandemic, we conditioned our students to know or to think that you can learn from home, you can learn online. We shifted an entire school district to a virtual platform in 2 weeks, which is an astounding feat, right? And when we did that, we created a culture where students were used to accessing no more paper and pencil, no more writing their papers at home, right? Everything is online. Everything is through that portal. All assignments are put there, they're graded there, right? And they're returned there. So it truly is an online experience. As has been well documented, the youth mental health crisis, which was bubbling up prior to the pandemic, became acute and utterly painful during the pandemic, and we are still seeing the effects of that in schools today. So school avoidance as a result of feeling mentally or socially unwell is part of this factor. And when students have signs of depression, this is some of the work that we are doing, which we'll hear about on May 23rd, because it's all connected. We've heard from students at this board table. We've heard from students in our student focus groups. As you go to schools, you probably talk to students. Many of our students do not see themselves in their school community. They may not feel welcome. They may not see themselves in the curriculum. They may not have a sense of belonging. And this is in addition to, right, some of the testimony we've heard about microaggressions or other more acute words or instances of hate and things of that nature. And finally, public school is frankly antiquated. Right? It hasn't changed since any of us at this table have been in school, and it probably hasn't changed that much since the beginning of the 20th century. While we may have smart boards, we may have more technology in the classroom, the configuration is the same. The system is the same. It was built in the earliest 20th century around principles of compliance, right? To prepare students for a factory economy. It was built to assimilate all of the immigrants that were coming in the early 20th century into the United States, into kind of the American culture. Our world is an antithesis of that world, and yet we have not adjusted public education as a result. And so I challenge anybody to really think about an environment where Mr. Saeed or the class of 2024 will experience their life at work, their life in the military, their life in graduate school, their life as a professional in a way that mirrors high school. It doesn't exist. There is no place after high school where you will sit for 45 minutes a day and raise your hand to go to the bathroom and receive information. It does not happen. Our students are living in a world that looks everything but the classrooms that they're in. They receive information, they communicate with each other, they are interested and they are stimulated and they are motivated and they are inspired in ways that are not necessarily prevalent in our classrooms. So it is going to take some long-term visionary work to think about how we are engaging in teaching and learning in a way that is truly in the 21st century and maybe even the 22nd. More on this will come at the end of the presentation. And I think our students, our CREA students today, I was watching some of that testimony in my office before I came down. I felt very fortuitous that they were speaking today, because that is exactly what we need to expand and build upon. And these bullet points were written way before I heard the testimony this morning clearly. For many of our students, they wake up every day and coming to school is a business decision. It is a life decision. It is an economic decision. And we have not adjusted to that reality, okay? And so it's time that we truly think about how we are offering our learning platforms, when those learning platforms are happening, what is the medium for that, and we'll speak a little bit more about that later. I'm now going to pass it over to Mr. Neff, who will go through a lot of this more in detail.
So good afternoon, Ms. Silvestri, Dr. Felder, members of the board. Again, thank you for the opportunity to have this dialogue. We appreciate it. Next slide, please. So based on the attendance data from the 21-22 school year and then the early data from the fall of 2022, it was clear that students were not coming back to school at the same attendance rate that they had pre-pandemic. And we knew that the reasons for this were plentiful, and we knew we had to address the issue using a strategic and a comprehensive approach. Towards that end, we started to pull together focus groups, each with a specific lens on factors that would improve student attendance. We also knew that we were not alone. Rather, this was a national issue, as evidenced by the headlines that Mr. Monteleone shared earlier. So we decided to reach out to a variety of national partners, some through structured contractual collaboration, and others through the mere exchanging of ideas and best practices. And along those lines, I've been invited to participate in a summit next week, Every Day Counts, addressing chronic absenteeism and increasing student engagement at the White House. Finally, I wanted to see, I think our comms department has a video that is ready to be shared. It's a very short video, and it's just a shining example of one of our partnerships. It's a video that was created by Belle Prairie Elementary School. So if we have that ready, please play.
Consistently seen steady declines in the chronic absenteeism rate of our students. So we're very proud of that, and I completely attribute that to the moves that our teachers have made, our well-being team has made.
They helped me understand how important it was for him to be at school every day, you know, because him being smart, he still needs the care and the teaching every day. I had a meeting with the school social worker and Ms. Brooks, and they presented resources for me for childcare and stuff to help get childcare for him, because that was the issue, him getting on the morning bus.
So for attendance to work, here at Belle Prairie Elementary, we take a multi-tiered approach. We know that attendance is not an isolated concern, that we really have to look broader.
When I couldn't send my son to school, they approached me and asked me, "How can we help you?" They gave me ideas and options to be able to improve that with my son. They have always helped me. And whenever they have doubts about my son, they always reach out to me or I came to school.
The program that we've had recently is a Panda Pals program, where we identified students who were in the 15 to 19% chronically absent range, and we paired each of those students with a staff mentor in our school, and that staff mentor meets with that student every day and recognizes them for coming to school. They have a quick conversation with them and really build that relationship so that every student feels that they belong and they have a safe adult to encourage them to come to school.
Other thing that we really we're intentional around is doing listen and learn meetings, whether virtually or in person with families, to just really introduce and start to kind of have face-to-face conversations with them. So just really clarifying how school works, how school is here to support their child through any barriers that they feel they need support with.
So thank you for that. What a great example of attendance work being done by the entire school team partnering with their parents. So thank you to Principal Dara Brooks for doing that for us. Next slide, please. So what do our data look like? These data were pulled from our new chronic absenteeism data dashboard, which I will highlight for you in a little while, and they were current as of April 17th. So as a school system entirely, our chronic absenteeism rate was down 2.63% below where we were as a district on the same day of school last school year. And I mentioned that this is real-time data, so I took the opportunity to take a look at that data earlier in the week, and as of Monday, it's at 2.70%. So we are hovering just above 2.5% below where we were at this time last year. Digging deeper into the data, however, we see that we have made the most gains with our youngest learners and are continuing to see challenges with our older learners, especially at the high school level. At the end of April, 19 of our elementary schools and 2 of our special schools had seen a chronic absenteeism decrease of 10% or more. 11 of our middle schools had seen a decrease of 3% or more, and 3 of our high schools had seen a decrease of 2% or more. Those are opportunities to learn from those schools what they are doing. All of our ethnic and service groups have similar patterns of decreased chronic absenteeism rates across levels, with relatively greater decreases for Hispanic students, EML students, and students with disabilities. Next slide, please. So these graphs reflect for MCPS what is also seen nationally. Next slide, please. Next slide. You're there. Thank you. A U-shaped pattern of chronic absenteeism rates as we move from our pre-K students all the way to our seniors. And again, these data show that we've been making the most gains with our youngest learners and still have the most work to do with our older learners, especially our high school students. We regularly look at our trend data to try to catch patterns early on, implement interventions in an attempt to reverse them. You can go to the next slide, please. So given the headlines shared earlier, it makes sense that national experts are conducting research to determine the most common root causes behind chronic absenteeism and identifying targeted interventions to address those concerns. Here are some of those findings. We know that we need to restore the mindset of the importance of everyday attendance, and that we need to constantly evaluate the culture and climate of our schools and classrooms. Punishment breaks a relationship. It's rooted in isolation, shame, and disconnection. True accountability, by contrast, requires communication and negotiation of needs. Staying closely to our data and engaging in positive problem solving is a must. If we do these things, we firmly believe that our data will continue to trend in the right direction over time, but we know it will take some time. Next slide, please. So we have implemented several changes in MCPS structures to address student attendance. Our updated school improvement plan structure now focuses on the addition of both student well-being and school culture and climate goals, and student well-being teams have become the leadership team in the school charged with creating school-specific goals in those areas. Schools continue to use the regular monitoring of attendance supported by the attendance data dashboard, which I will preview later. And in these meetings, they discuss which student groups, service groups, ethnic groups, grade levels are attending school less regularly and why, and then how can we proactively engage those communities. For individual students and families, student well-being teams continue to engage in collaborative problem solving, asking what barriers need to be removed, what resources are available and needed, and they document and monitor their interventions in the MTSS platform. Every Friday, I share attendance data, which is shared with Dr. Moran's Associate Superintendent team on Monday mornings. Those data include how we are doing as a student, at school levels, and within student groups, schools that are in need of monitoring, and how we are tracking with the number of schools at or above a 25% chronic absenteeism rate. When school supervisors conduct school support team meetings to pull together a team to focus on the needs of individual schools, our office provides disaggregated real-time attendance data and participates in those discussions. Next slide, please. The student well-being team is a multidisciplinary team consisting of a school administrator, school counselors, pupil personnel workers, parent community coordinators, social workers, emergent multilingual therapeutic counselors, or ETCs, and other teacher leaders. Team members, especially pupil personnel workers and parent community coordinators, truly know these families, understanding the challenges they face in the home and the community, and they've built trusting relationships to the point where parents and students feel comfortable sharing the barriers they are facing. Once those barriers are understood, student well-being team members connect the family with school system and community resources through warm handoffs. Next slide, please. We so value our partnerships and want to thank the Bridge to Wellness, Linkages to Learning, Community Schools, Department of Recreation, and our nonprofit partners. Thank you specifically to DHHS for the many partnerships we enjoy. We also enjoy a long-standing collaborative relationship with the state's attorney's office. We are in partnership to implement the truancy prevention program, which is now currently in 25 out of 40 middle schools, as well as one high school. We are always looking for ways to expand that partnership, which enjoyed its spring semester graduation ceremony last evening. Attendance Works is a leading national organization focusing on the issue of chronic absenteeism. We had the pleasure of working with them this year to pilot a year-long attendance community of practice in 16 schools across 2 clusters with the highest absenteeism rates. Compared to the 2.62% decrease seen across the entire system, these 16 schools experienced a 6.72% decrease at the time of their last communities of practice meeting on April 24th. Next slide, please. So Mr. Monteleone discussed this, but I think it's worth bringing up again. So why are our students not coming to school and parents not sending their children to school? Focus groups with students and caregivers, and this is corroborated by research, suggests that the reasons are many, and they tend to fall into 3 categories. There are students who feel like they can't go to school because they have to work, support their families by watching younger siblings, have chronic medical conditions, or experiencing housing instability. There are students who won't go to school because of bullying or safety concerns or embarrassment when they're in school. And there are students who make a choice not to go to school because they do not feel seen or valued, or they do not see the value in attending. As has been mentioned, we have created a variety of structures that are designed to be proactive and preventative to address many of these barriers to student attendance. Since the August press conference, we have provided regular proactive communications around the importance of attendance and engagement. We have also partnered with agencies like Identity to share this messaging with a targeted audience. We have created an attendance monitoring and interventions operations guide to build the capacity of staff and school teams to engage in the continuum of promotion, outreach, collaborative problem solving, and targeted interventions related to students' attendance. This summer, we will conduct enhanced professional development for student well-being teams to reduce the variability in implementation across all of our schools and to ensure that structured interventions are documented in our Synergy MTSS platform. Beginning with the 4th quarter, we have used the Synergy Student Information System and the Remind app to enhance the method and the language in which we proactively communicate attendance concerns with families. This quarter, we have been notifying families at certain absence thresholds, specifically 3, 5, and 10 days. We have been particularly mindful of the tone and the language in these communications. Previous communications that we have sent, typically via a letter, have been less supportive with language like, "These absences are above the norm and could seriously impact your child's academic performance." Our new messaging is culturally competent, informative, empathetic, and offers support with language such as, "We stand ready to help if you are experiencing any barriers to your child's attendance." We are very pleased with the attendance data dashboard that went live in mid-March. Next slide, please, so I can share some of the features of the dashboard. So the dashboard allows us to view chronic absenteeism data at the district level and across schools. The school page displays data down to the individual student level. We're able to filter chronically absent students by school type, grade level, race, gender, EML, IEP, 504, farms, and newcomers. Data is refreshed nightly and is pulled directly from Synergy attendance data. Next slide, please. So as our data shows, even with our promotional, proactive, and preventative efforts, we still have students who are chronically absent. We use real-time attendance data to both focus our interventions and identify schools that are in need of additional support. We are closely monitoring that real-time attendance data on an almost daily basis. We have a variety of ways that we share these data with our central office partners. Individual school teams continue to monitor their own attendance data on a bi-weekly basis, which is made easier by the data dashboard. They spend time conducting outreach to their CUSP students, who are students who are hovering just at or above the chronic absenteeism rate of 10%. They also solicit qualitative data from students and caregivers to learn the reasons for their disengagement. We know that we can only learn the why behind a student's lack of attendance if we have built a relationship with the student and the family. Now I would like to turn it back to Mr. Monteleone to bring us home. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Neff. So the road ahead, I think it's clear, right? So we have made a dent. Our goal in August was a 5% reduction. So we're at 2.7 right about now. We have seen clearly, and the anecdotal evidence, the visits to the high schools tell us about the pervasive or greater impact of attendance at the high school level. So that's really, if we think about all the tools that we've used from a district and a school level, we've put a lot of technical pieces in place. We've had a lot of data infrastructure pieces. We built structures and processes within the school. We have teams. We've enhanced our partnerships with our external partners and community members. We really need to focus in on what we're looking at the high school level. So these are some pieces that are being worked on across the district right now. One is, we've heard a lot, right? People often say, well, change the attendance policy. And for those of you who may remember, there was a time when we had, and it was part of the grading and reporting policy, about a LC, a loss of credit, or an E3. And for those who want to, say, let's go back to that and have everybody fail if they don't come to class, I just want to remind folks that, of course, fell upon our black and brown students. It was a practice that was not systemic. It was high degrees of variability. Not all schools even engaged in the E3 or the LC policy, and it may have even differentiated within a schoolhouse. I don't think that we are in a place where we want to penalize students' grades for things that may be outside of their control and attach that grade to the impacts that they may be facing. So there are ways, and I know that our friends in curriculum and instruction are looking at perhaps incentivizing. What are the ways that we can incentivize students to be in that second marking period, be in that fourth marking period, attend school consistently so that they have to be there to earn that passing grade or that credit? What are those ways? So that work is ongoing, and we are optimistic there. And the last piece, again, back to our CREA partners. If you would just, I'm getting to a certain age, so if you could indulge me, there was a time when I taught night school, physical night school, at Northwood High School when it was a holding school. I was in my 20s. I had nothing to do at night. I would show up. There was a principal there. There was an assistant principal. There was a counseling team. It was like a whole school at night at Northwood. And there were hundreds of kids in there and a full staff. I also did it on Saturday mornings at Saturday school, right? So there was a time in the old brick and mortar sense, right, when we didn't all live on these things, when we went to a place and we provided alternative and accessible and flexible course offerings, right, and teaching and learning platforms. We've gotten away from that. So we are looking, and with Dr. Moran and with others throughout the district. I've seen Mr. Saeed nodding. I've talked to him about this. And I believe the board, when we went through a budget, there was a request from the board to look at how we can leverage the expertise and what we've learned at MBA, perhaps to consider having a greater impact. So we are looking at potential pilots and thinking of, like, I'm going to give you a little imagine a world, right? Imagine a world where a student, when they go to register for their high school classes in December or January, doesn't only see the classes that, like, Richard Montgomery High School is offering on a 7-period schedule, but they see classes that are available through a virtual or hybrid learning platform in the evening. So I'm going to take 2 classes at RM. I'm going to take 3 in the evening if I have to. So I'm going to set up my schedule for first-time credit, not credit recovery necessarily. So there's an opportunity to develop that. There's potential. We are looking at that and going to study that. Same thing for our teachers. We heard coming out of the pandemic about our teachers for a desire for flexibility. We have many teachers who may have young students who may say, hey, it would be great if I could teach 2 during the day and 3 at night because I have a child in pre-K or childcare or what have you. So it is my passion and my inclination, along with other district leaders, that we explore every single opportunity that we have to see how we meet our students where they currently are. Because as you all know from your visits to schools, we have an acute need at the high school level, and we need to meet students where they are. And I thank you for your time. And if we can go to the next slide, I believe we're up for discussion.
Okay, Mr. Saeed, and then Ms. Wolf.
Yeah, so I want to start off by thanking you guys for the presentation and all the things you guys are doing. I agreed with, a lot of what you were saying, Mr. Monteleone. I love what you talked about when you talked about, our public school system as just a model in general is stuck in the past. Fully agree, and I really like that we're looking at those innovative strategies. I liked how you talked about scheduling at the end. Big supporter of that. I think if students had that flexibility to adjust their schedule so they can, factor in things like a job, to factor in any family responsibilities, anything like that. I think that's an innovative approach. And, I don't know if that's what we were doing all the way in the past. I'm still, pretty young, so I wouldn't know. But, hey, if that's something we're doing, it's definitely great. And I appreciate a lot of the other work that you guys brought up as well. I think that's really important. So I'm going to kind of give my thoughts on attendance based on what I've seen as a high school student. And that was the group that we identified in the data is having more problems now than they were having last year, and I see that firsthand. What I can say is this plan, as comprehensive as it is, I don't think is as effective as it could be, and I really don't think that it is working to the full degree that it can work. So the way that when I think of student attendance, there's a few groups of students I identify. Students that are always at school, they're always going to be at schools, they have really good attendance. Students who are kind of in that, middle, the chronic absentee, the 10%, kind of on the fence, and then students that are always going to be a challenge due to whether it be responsibilities at home and all that to be able to attend school. The vast majority of the students that we have in that, chronic absentee or truant are those students, from my experience, in that maybe group. And what a lot of those students need is they need an incentive for what they want to see at school, but they also need something to say, here's what happens if you don't go. And that is the piece that we are missing here. I fully believe that. As a senior in high school, I know what seniors talk about when they don't go to school. You know what it is? What happens if I don't? They're gonna do anything to me? No. So why would I woke up 30 minutes late today. Do I even have to go to school? Nothing's gonna happen. And students know that. They know nothing's gonna happen to them. As long as they don't go into a branch where, there are severe consequences for missing long stretches of school, the average high school student who may wake up late or may not feel like going to school, at this point, because they know nothing will happen, won't go to school. And they'll make that conscious decision. And the impacts of that are we cannot state that enough. And here's the thing, I see two sides of it. We do need to make changes at the school level to incentivize students to go, but that is a very long, tedious process that you guys are clearly undertaking here. But we cannot forget about that push factor that's gonna get students to go, get them out of bed, think, if I don't go today, there will be consequences. And I think that's the part that we're missing, that we really, really need. And that's what I've been seeing each and every day with our students, that's what's going on. And I don't know what that looks like. I know you talked about credit loss maybe not being the best strategy, punishments maybe not being the best strategy, but we got to reevaluate something, because the way that I describe this attendance policy is one without any teeth. It's got nothing in it that's going to say, if you don't go, here's what's going to happen. It's really got none of that. And students are understanding it. And so when we talk about, we made students shift to this virtual mindset, right? If we want them to shift back, we're not just going to have to change the school system, but we're going to have to change their mindset that nothing happens if you don't go back, because that's the mindset that's still lingering in students' minds. So I do wholeheartedly, genuinely appreciate all this work, and I think the attendance issue is one you have to tackle on two ends, and I think you guys are getting one end really good. But I think that we are lacking extremely on the end of student accountability, and we need to hold students accountable. And it's not going to be a very popular perspective, but I know the only time I've seen students care about being like, I got to go to school, is when they think something is going to happen to them. I'm telling you, truant students come to me and they say, I think that they might, talk about not spending me or not having me in school. Then they'll go. We need to have a policy that says something about that, because a lot of these kids who are on the fence, who could be in class, who could be getting better grades, who could be prioritizing their future, are not, because they know nothing happens to them otherwise. So that's just my thoughts. And so I have a question with that, which is, in our current policy, is there anything that says, like, if you miss 10, 20 days in a row, something happen? Is there any sort of clear point where it says something will happen if you miss this many days? What's stopping a student from just not showing up ever?
So if a student is absent 10 consecutive full days unexcused, they are to be withdrawn. So that is the consequence for students who miss consecutive days like that.
Sure. Temporarily. So 10 consecutive days. Are they at risk of being withdrawn, or they just get withdrawn?
They should be withdrawn. If a student has an IEP, there are IEP considerations that the team discusses, but broadly, they are to be withdrawn, and then they and their caregiver can seek to re-enroll, and when they do, schools usually have processes in place where they set expectations about their re-enrollment.
Okay, that's good. I think that's an endpoint. We just need something for that, for something that's not 10 days, but not nothing. We have to say if you miss this many days, you won't get withdrawn, but something will happen. I think that is a good policy.
Ms. Wolf?
Okay, you know, we have to be able to balance accountability with these proactive measures, and I think that's what Sammy is talking about. However, whenever you start to do that, and you look at behavior as opposed, when you make the grades the result of the behavior, it's always Black and Latino students that lose. And so I don't know how you balance that, but I think that we have to think about that very carefully, because we don't want to be in the situation where there's disproportionality because of behavior, not because of actual mastery of the subject matter. But I do think that we have to come up with a system where we get these kids in class. We just do. I noticed that safety was not one of your considerations up there, and you might have mentioned it as to why students don't come to school, because recently I've been hearing that a lot of students feel impacted by the events that are going on in their schools, and they're scared to be in the building. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing that you might want to consider. I don't know what we do about it. You know, we've got people opening doors, letting people in. There are a lot of things going on when you have a high school. But looking at these numbers for chronically absent and looking at the high schools, they're really, some of them are almost 50%. Something really has to be done. But I just want you to be careful that you don't have disproportionality based on behavior and not grades, and think about what we can do to prevent that, and at the same time make these students accountable for being in class.
So if I may, and I appreciate you saying that, Ms. Wolf, just to be clear, just so I can level set for what that old E3 or LC was, essentially what would happen is if you hit a threshold of 10 unexcused, right, you could fail the class. And unexcused, you could fail. So just real talk, who's having their parents sign notes for them and who's not having their parents sign notes for them? What parents may be able to enable, right, some of that behavior. And I would just say that the way it was set up, right, is that it absolutely had an impact on our Black and brown students and students of poverty, and it absolutely had, the data was clear in some schools versus other schools. And there was a high degree of variability within schools, sometimes from teacher to teacher within a school. So that going back to something like that, and that's why, and I kind of looked back at Ms. Hazel back there, but a lot of the incentive, right, that we're talking about is through grading and reporting in the grading reporting regulation. If we were to go to an attendance, if this language is in the attendance policy, then what do you have through an attendance policy other than punitive measures, right? So this is truly a problem of practice, if you will, right? So this is the reality of where we are. It's a very honest conversation that we're having here publicly, but this is the work, the real work we're struggling with.
Mr. Vedavan?
Okay. Is that okay if I go? Okay. So just personally, when I look at these numbers, and even before they hurt me, when I looked at the live portal and I see a couple of the schools, one of them, a school that I graduated from, and it's the #1 truant school. It's heartbreaking. And then you have schools then like CREA, and you want to, it's like we all want to know what the disconnect is. So I guess my question is, have we gone to the source? Have we actually gone to the kids who are absolutely chronic and spoke to them one-on-one as the team that you have and said, what is it that you're missing within our system that you're not getting? Why is it, because, young people sometimes, they make decisions day-by-day basis, right? They don't think about their future. This is why we're an education system, to kind of guide them and educate them. So for me, it's like going to, you have top 3 or top 4 high schools. I want to know exactly what your team is doing in those high schools to work with those chronic students specifically. You know them by name, you know who they are, and if the answer is one of those risk factors where some of them have to work during the day, which is a very likely thing that is happening today, because I see it through the work that I do up county, where I see young women coming through our doors with babies. They're not even their babies, they're their little sisters and so on, to pick up diapers a certain time, or food because they have to stay home because the mom has to work. Or they have to put their young siblings on the bus, so then they miss the bus for high school. Like, what other things are we doing? Like a second round of buses that go to these chronic areas that we know, with certain high schools that we know that they're having an issue. So I just want to know proactively, what is it that we are doing? And again, as Ms. Wills mentioned, these are mainly Black and brown kids. But mainly, when I look at the data, they're mainly Latino EML farm kids, right? And we see these kids all through. We see them in 3rd grade, they're not doing well. We even see them in kindergarten, they're not doing well. So we see them throughout the whole system going through, and then we see them in 12th grade and they have a high. So I guess for me, it's like, what interventions are we doing? And I'm familiar with the state's attorney's program. That's a very small program. There's very little data. There's a little bit of follow-up. It's nice for that year, but then that kid in high school, there's no follow-through. There's no, as you say, no mentoring. There's no, now you need to keep on doing this. It's like a 1-year thing, so it's a little bit of a Band-Aid, in my opinion. I want something consistent. And what we heard from the kids from CREA was one of the things, transportation was an issue. And they go to school twice a week because they can afford an Uber twice a week. Because otherwise they're gonna be on the bus. If they live in Damascus, they're gonna be on the bus for 2.5 hours trying to go home, because you have one bus that goes through all, and they have to go to work the next day, right? These are real things. So then the kids, like, I save money, I go to school twice a week, I try to get my assignments so I can do them. These are real issues that are happening right now in our system. And then we talk to the kids at Kennedy, and they're like, thank God I'm a 12th grader and I'm graduating because I don't feel safe. They talked about the incident with the knife, where they said the young people who were, I believe, EML students, they were traumatized. And there was no follow-up from central office with the crisis team to go and talk to them and say, okay, this is not really, this is, we're gonna work with you, we want you here. Because I bet you those kids are gonna be like, I don't wanna go to school. I just came here from a place where I felt vulnerable and threatened, and I'm coming here and seeing a kid being, run down with a knife right in front of me. Why, so safety, it's a real concern for a lot of these students. So I just want to hear concrete things of what you are doing in some of these schools that we know we're almost like at a 50% truancy.
So I can start, and there were a lot of questions there, but I will try. No, that's okay. I will try to address many of them. In terms of, are we asking our students? The answer is yes, and it's in a variety of ways. We are pulling focus groups or visiting ELD classrooms. Some schools have gotten creative, and they have gathered up their hall walkers, and rather than create a punitive opportunity for them, they've basically asked them to do a reflection and why are you not going to class? And is it related to that particular class or a teacher or something particularly going on? We had another school had an assistant principal stand at the front door, 15 minutes after school started, and every student that came in late, why were you late today? Again, not accusingly or menacingly, just finding out, transportation issues, having to get my younger sibling off to school and things like that. So we are hearing those things, which lends us to want to continue to build out our creative options. It's, specifically to some of the schools that you're thinking of, and I'm probably thinking of as well, we're working directly with them. One school has reached out to us, with their administrative team, and they have some things that they want to do that are creative in terms of how they program and schedule, and they need technical support. They need permission in some ways in terms of making sure that it is not, violating anything, for MSDE. We need sort of the blessing of human resources and our union partners if we're looking to ask school staff members to have alternative schedules themselves so that students can have alternative schedules. We have had a school that asked about follow-up buses. A particular high school that says one of our communities is on that 1.5 to 2 mile line, and if they miss that bus, it's too hard for them to get to school. And can we not just circle a bus around, one more time across, 3 or 4 of the bus stops. And we've actually, explored, the possibility of that with our transportation partners, given their limited resources. So we are engaging, I think we're engaging with probably all of the schools that you're thinking of in a variety of ways, because they know what they would like to do, and then we have to help them figure out, can it be done both logistically and is it procedurally correct to do so? But we are looking to give them an opportunity to be creative.
Ms. Yang?
Yes.
Peter,
oh, sorry.
I was just going to, if you don't, real quick, I was just going to add that I think it's important to acknowledge that students don't come to school for programs, they come to school for people. And if you really go back to your own educational experience, most of us went to school because there was someone we wanted to see, right? And it was a teacher. And one of the things, and I recently was at Northwest High School with the administrative team there. And the way that they were looking at attendance data was even broken down by teacher. And what you'll find is that a lot of our students will not go to a class, maybe 2, and then they'll come back for, Ms. Mondrowski's class or Ms. Evans' class because of the quality of instruction, because they feel that they're cared for, they have this connection, relationship. So that's what we have, I think there's an instructional piece to this that we have to also be very open about. The quality of instruction, the quality of the engagement in the classroom is a determinant if a student goes to class or not. And so that's something that we need to work on as well. I will say, again, just to highlight Northwest, because I was just there, there were no students in the hallways when I was walking around Northwest. And I have been to some other high schools where that hasn't been the case. And the conversation I had with Mr. Smith and his administrative team, when I asked, how have you gotten to this place? And he just was like, it's all about habits, just consistent habits. And a lot of what we're talking about is just that. It's predictability. This is going to happen if I don't go to class, like Mr. Saeed was saying. But it's just consistent expectations and also the times. And I was, I'll give you an example. I was at Lakeland's and I was in Miss Rahman's class. And I remember because it was just the instruction was outstanding. The environment was outstanding. A student walked in late And she didn't scold that student or anything. She literally just looked at him and said, "So happy that you're here. You know, let me just get you, caught up." It was not. She didn't stop instruction. So I think there are all these also little things too, where it's not punitive, but you create this environment where the kids want to be there, and when they're not there for some reason, you have those kind of relationships. I just wanted to add that part.
That was huge.
Yeah, okay.
Ms. Yang.
Actually, really appreciate Dr. Moran's comment. Student go to school. I reflect back on my schooling. I think it's two things that why I went. One is, yeah, of course, there's the social aspect. That's where my friends are, right? But also, I was expected to go. And I knew that if I go, things will work out for me. There was hope at the end. There is consequence, positive consequence at the end. So when we discussed attendance, I think there are two words that we shouldn't mix together. One is punishment, one is consequence. Life is full of choices that sometimes that bring about positive consequences and sometimes that bring about negative consequences. Schooling, by dedication to schooling, hopefully that brings you positive, good choice for your life, consequence. Now, I'm on the dashboard. I love the dashboard. Okay, now my question. It shows I'm looking at high school. It gives me a big fat red arrow, 10.44% change from September 30th. As of today, right now. I fully appreciate Mr. Saeed say there are different kind of situation and students. Do we think the root cause has changed for 10.44% since the September till now in May? Is that what brought about this change of data? Why is the change of the data?
So I will tell you that data point, frankly, can be a little deceiving because that is the data point of where we were when we did our count for the state at on September 30th, which is traditionally low. So the one that I look at is probably one tab over to the left, which I think it's still the red arrow, but I think it's about 0.63 or 0.7 when talking about all of high schools. And that's compared to yesterday in this school year and where we were on that same day of school last school year. And I'm not sure if you're on the chronic absenteeism dashboard or not. Okay,
Yeah.
So again, I'm not negating the concern about the 10.44%.
No, I'm sorry. You lost me there.
Okay.
I'm not comparing today to last year today. I'm comparing today to September 30th this year. I want to understand why, as the year go on, less of our students come to school.
Motivation.
So that's what I'm trying to understand here. We up 0.77 from last year, not a good sign to me, but I'm not as concerned as the 10.44% rise within the school year.
So my answer would be, the attendance is always better at the beginning of the school year. And then as we progress through the school year, we start to have holidays which impact attendance. I can tell you, I know there are many reasons for this, but those 2 half days before Thanksgiving do not do us any favors related to attendance. So I think some of those things happen. As well as, and we've talked about this in terms of accountability. High school students know that there are they can earn a certain grade in the first quarter, and the second and the fourth quarter, they can do far less.
Exactly. Right. They figured out how to game the system, and when we say, oh, we cannot do this, cannot do that, but is that really helping our students to be in school?
So I'm going to give myself a follow-up action item from this board meeting to try to see if we have some data to prove the theory. I'm curious what that high school attendance data point looks like, second and fourth marking periods compared to first and third. And so our current secondary grading policy, grade calculation is, I'm not going to reveal something the students don't know. If you earn a 69.4 and your teacher bumps it to a 69.5 and you get a C for the first marking period or third marking period and you never show up again, you will earn credit in that class.
Yeah.
Period. Yep. End of story, full stop. So it's worth exploring second marking period, fourth marking period in terms of attendance. So when we talk about incentivizing, right, consistent student attendance through a grading reporting regulation, I should say, then you may consider how grades are calculated. You may consider if we had a second or fourth marking period district assessment that was based upon content taught second or fourth marking period. So again, it's not penalizing kids with a zero tolerance hammer, right, for not being there for 10 unexcused. It is providing, as you said, Ms. Yang, if I do this, there is a positive consequence, right? And so if I want to get that C or if I want to pass the class A or a B, I must go.
So yes, so if your life circumstances hasn't changed from quarter 1 to quarter 2, what should we do? How do we hold the student accountable? Okay, so then let me ask you another question. I'm also, again, on the dashboard. I do a screenshot because it's hard to juggle it. And I'm looking at the top 10 high schools that have the highest absentee rate, okay? And you know what? Sadly to me, these are the schools have the highest Black and brown students and English as a second language students, our multilingual emerging learners, okay? English emerging learners. So we don't want to, when we say we don't want to be punitive in terms of grade because that impacted our Black and brown students. But when I look at the attendance data with some of the schools, close to 50%, my stomach turned into a knot, my hands started to shake, I can barely speak coherently because it upset me so much because this is severely impacted our Black and brown and English as a second language students. So are we helping or are we not helping? What are we doing that is helping? What are we doing that is not helping? I don't have the answer. That's why you are the expert. And I'm here trying to do oversight and accountability. Okay, so that's my next question. Okay, my third question, can you go to slide 17, please? And the road ahead, I think that's the slide. And I'm very happy that we are looking at different ways to improve this because data has shown us again and again, being in school increase students' achievement and performance, right? At MCPS, I think we always say smarty goals. So these are wonderful plans, but can I have it as a smarty goal? Like, can I have it as when is this going to be delivered? Or are we going to look at this like, can I have a timeline? Can I have how this is going to be measured? Can I have it like, yeah, so I'm trying to understand here.
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, so these are some things that we are looking at, but I want it to be more concrete because we talk about smarty goals.
By when?
So by when would this be delivered? How would this be evaluated? And what are we targeting to solve, right?
So I'll with the flexible course offerings, right? So this is, in all honesty, this is something that we are looking to pilot on a very small scale with current resources, with zero impact on a budget at one of our high schools. One. Full transparency, we need to build this up over the coming school year to launch this potentially for what would that be, 25, 26. So if the district has serious interest, right, in looking at what that innovative or flexible course platform, whatever I talked about, night school, Saturday school, if we're looking at that, some school districts call it Twilight, right, Twilight school or Twilight course offerings, then we would need to be able to provide at least a core set of opportunities or courses for students by January as part of the master scheduling process and course enrollment process.
Okay.
And then I would like to add, good afternoon, in terms of grading and reporting, many of you know that we started phase 1 of our work group, which was really just to address some minor areas, including end of course assessments. So that was phase 1. And then currently we have a grading and reporting work group led by Dr. Logan. And we certainly have these gentlemen here as a part of that. To look at 50% rule and other areas. And we also have been very fortunate to have a consultant come in as well and talk with us and talk to us about the research and the data. So we don't want to get into a space where grades are punitive, but I do want to clarify that currently in our current policy, it is not true that if a student never shows up, they pass the course. That is not true. If you look in our policy, a student, if they never came to school, will earn a 0. Okay, and so that is in our policy, and it is, and we are looking at that. Now, we do know that there are students who know how to game the system. Yes, that is true. We are talking about that now, but I just don't want that statement out there that if they never come to school during the whole marking period, that they will pass the course, because that is not accurate.
Yeah, my kids would have taken advantage of that if they had heard it.
No, but my son did. He show up once every other week. He did great in that class, but I was the only one holding him accountable. Say, why did I get a call from school today? Which period did you miss? The period after lunch. Every single day. Show up once every other week. Good enough.
So to Ms. Yang's point, when will those work groups, all the things that are happening, you did mention when can we see change?
My understanding is that at the end of this, you want to come on up? Yes. Okay, Dr. Logan will come up. May she take that seat? Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So we have one final meeting coming up on May 21st for the grading and reporting work group. And at the end of that time, by the end of May, the beginning of June, we will have some recommendations that will come out of that work group that will be shared with our MCPS executive leadership, with our union partners, certainly with the Board of Education, so that some decisions can be made about possible changes to our regulation. And so we're talking about at this time revisions to our regulation. Things, as Ms. Hazel said, to reduce variability in schools. We've had a very narrow focus with the grading and reporting work group. 2 charges to look at the 50% rule, as well as the intersection of grades and attendance, as was the focus today. And so what are the first bullet point here, what are some of the things that we can recommend that would incentivize students? A part of, just to give you a taste of some of the things that we've been discussing in the work group and gathering input, and this is a multi-stakeholder group. We've really had some great discussions. Taking a look at ways to assess student learning, because really we took a look at the purpose of grades and made sure we were very clear on the purpose of grades is to ensure that we're able to assess what students know and are able to do. Well, in order for teachers to be able to do that, students must be present for the learning to be able to then demonstrate what they have learned, right, through the assessments that we give. And so we need to be able to assess that. In a way, our grading system needs to be able to allow teachers to be able to assess. And so what are our current assessments that are in place that teachers are able to do, that they have the flexibility to do? What does our regulation currently allow them to do? Is there flexibility or room to add to? Those are the kinds of discussions that we're having, and then the recommendations will reflect where we're able to land. So by the beginning of June, we'll have those recommendations there so that when our principals go into their planning for the summer, they will hopefully have some direction about changes and will be able to communicate with their staff in the fall about what those will be.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are you, as you know, I've been on the policy committee for a long time, and I'm wondering if your work groups are looking at all, you know, kind of to Ms. Wolf's point, or whoever, but is there a change, and how is that broken down from when we used to have policy in place with the, you know, the grading and reporting aspect as well as the attendance aspects that have been changed over the years? Are we looking at all in terms of if it is positively or negatively affecting any of our special groups?
Yeah, so we're looking at the regulation right now, and we are definitely looking through the lens of our equity-focused questions. And so every single meeting, we start with that and thinking about those unintended consequences, always thinking about exactly that, right? Making sure that we're looking through the lens of equity always. We also have a really diverse representation within our group. And then last summer, during phase 1, we ensured when we went out to collect, we had some student focus groups, and we went to some different schools across the county to gather feedback from our students as well. So we've been very mindful of that as we've been going through this process, and we'll continue to do that moving forward for sure.
Yeah, so that sounds like, yeah, sounds like that this first one we have
a plan.
Upcoming soon, we'll be able to hear something. But anyway, so I'm gonna yield my time to my colleagues. I think I appreciate having this conversation because if we examine students' achievement, we also must examine how we get to that achievement, right? Attendance is a big part of the conversation. Our instruction quality is, our root analysis is, and also that our policy and regulations impact on student behavior. All those things need to be examined. I'm glad that we bring back this topic. We set a goal for this year to do. We haven't met it, but I'm glad that we continue to talk about it. Thank you.
Mrs. Mandrowski and then Mrs. Evans.
Thank you. I'll try and be really quick. To Mr. Saeed's point about, you know, it being a mindset for our students in terms of what they know they can get away with and what they're willing to try and get away with and all that, I also want to point out, particularly for that middle group, I think it's really important that we consider the parents' mindsets as well, and the staff mindsets. You know, I know a lot of parents whose kids will say, I don't want to go to school today, and they're like, well, you've got good grades, okay. So, and because they know that nothing's going to happen to them, it doesn't matter. But I also feel it's that way with staff and stuff. You know, my son would never, if he went into the classroom and his teacher wasn't there, he would just leave and walk home. And it was like 7 miles sometimes. But do we track our staff attendance? And if we do we utilize that data in any kind of way to ensure that if there's a problem in that area, we're addressing it? Because as you said, it's all about relationships, and if you're not there, you can't have a relationship.
So I think we may need to have OHRD speak to this, but my understanding is that we track substitutes, right? if we want to go to Erskine to track. So in other words, we can tell you on any given day how many substitutes are in school for teachers, right? But not necessarily all staff unless you did a deep dive into their leave through, I guess, Erskine. But that's just my understanding, right?
Or just to piggyback off of Mrs. Smardowski, if you track substitutes, then you could get to the school and to the classroom, and you could eventually figure it out
if you know where they are,
yeah.
rather than just the count.
We do track staff attendance.
Oh, you do? Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Well, anyways, just thank you very much. Please, to me, a lot of this, what's so important about all of this aspects is also the policy side of things, which, is where the board is one of our top 3 things we're charged to do. And, it was a lot of decision-making and back and forth with when we changed the homework policy and when we changed the grading and reporting policy and when we changed the attendance policies. And so I feel like that I'd really like to know that we're looking through these work groups and everything else through the lens of what is it that we as a board need to do, what changes do we need to make, and how do we explain them to the general population. Thank you.
So my question, well, a lot of my colleagues addressed some of the questions that I had, but I did want to go back to Dr. Logan to ask a question. Some of the work groups that we have, are we intentionally targeting some of the students that are struggling to somehow participate, or if not, get their feedbacks? I think it would really behoove us to hear from the students who we say we created some of these policies for that are actually being impacted. So that's question 1. Go ahead.
No, yes, absolutely. And what we have found has really helped. So the work group is meeting in the evenings, where we found some really rich feedback from students. A diverse array of students is when we go out into the schools.
Perfect, yes.
And visiting, lots of different schools. And actually, our intern that we have, Nico D'Orazio, has been a huge help. So he's facilitated some of those work groups. So you have a student leading students in focus groups to collect some of that data has been tremendous for us.
You're right, because you came to policy committee, and then we did mention that Nico went out. Okay, but I was just really thinking too, in terms of the conversation that we're having around attendance. I know Principal Brooks from Belle Pre had made a good point about really, going to the parents to see what some of the issues were. So I think we should continue to do that, because the chronic absences for some of our students could go a little bit deeper than what we know, and the parents are better to give that explanation, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. And Mr. Johnson was here. He came to the Strategic Planning Committee meeting from Rocky Hill, talking about how they've made some changes and impacts in their school because they've created student ambassadors. So we could just continue to find some ways in our schools to pull our students into the fold. It'll give them the reason to want to come back to school. I did hear Mr. Saeed mention, and then it made me think about our CREA students that are working. If we could find a way to give our students that have jobs some kind of incentive, whether it's, if you're working, right, then we'll give you some type of credit that could help, right?
Instead of SSLers.
or just
Yeah.
something that could help them. I just think having the conversation with some of our students to ask them how it could benefit them more, with the school being flexible and thinking about how we could help meet their needs, because we do want them to come to school, right? So it's, no, I was going to say it's a good conversation. I do think that we have to continue to really think about how we can get students to come to school, because if there's not something that would draw them in, then we're going to continue to see what we're seeing. You mentioned that school has changed a lot. It has, and there's a lot happening out in our community that is either bringing kids to school because they feel safer there, or keeping them at home because they don't feel safe for a variety of reasons. So those are just some of the comments I wanted to leave.
I just wanted to clarify something. When we were at Kennedy, they were talking about, and even as part of this discussion, the people who have to work and taking online classes and the ability for them to do that. I thought that we had night school. Do we not have like a somewhere in the county, or hopefully multiple places in the county, other than in CREA? Do we not offer that anymore?
It must have been years ago. I don't recall ever being here in OSIP when we had it, but I've heard about it. So it is something that, we've been talking about, how we are using some creative strategies to think about how to get kids back into some type of evening or online course. So again, I think what Mr. Monteleone said, just in the beginning stages of having the conversation, and I think he's got some ideas for a few schools that we're looking into.
I thought that our alternative programs, of which we now have 3 locations for our alt programs, I thought that they all 3 of those offered evening classes. No? Okay. Well,
Hazel, can you
good place to look at putting it.
Yes, no, that is not my understanding.
Okay.
For the alt programs, that's something offering a different kind of programming for students, but that is not my understanding. But we'll look into the history and get back to you and then provide some updates on where we want to move forward.
Well, since those 3 locations are spread across the county, might be a good place to start.
Ms.
One last thing, I think too, we really need to think about what we're going to do differently or more for our substitute teachers, because when subs come in the building, I don't care if the student is a really engaged student and they're going to class to do the work, or if they're not. There's a difference when a sub's in the building, and so we can make changes to that difference to make sure that they're getting that training that they need, so that when the students know that they're in the class, they're going to get the same thing they're going to get when their favorite teacher is not there, when a teacher is not there, period. So there's some things that we can do on our end, and we need to look at that. We've been talking about that for a while, but that just keeps coming up, and so we don't want our parents to think that when we have long-term subs or we have subs in the building that there's no learning happening. And if learning is not happening, then we need to make that change too.
Ms. Harris.
Thanks. Do appreciate Mr. Monteleone reflecting on conversations I know you and I have had about education in Maryland being very much trapped in the last century. So looking at these things kind of through a fiscal lens, first question I have is, if you look at the data, the worst chronic absenteeism is in our pre-K programming. So is that consistent with PEP and regular pre-K? Is there a difference there?
It is consistent, and part of that is because compulsory attendance starts at age 5, and so it is not compulsory for students to attend pre-K.
Okay.
We don't feel that makes it less important, but it does make it a little bit more optional from a parent when they're making a decision on any given morning.
Because if according to so that's an issue that we need to raise with the state, because if Blueprint is requiring pre-K and we are spending a lot of money on pre-K, we need people to show up. Because if you're not showing up, then you aren't getting the benefit for which that program is intended and for which we are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, okay, that's a policy question, I guess, that we need to take up with the state, because when I look at those numbers and I see the amount of money we are pouring into this program, and then half the people on a regular basis don't bother to come, that is a huge, huge, huge problem. And then looking at, so you mentioned the Attendance Works program, piloting in 16 schools. Can you be a little more specific as to what exactly the interventions are that are being utilized in those pilot schools? And if there are things there that we can simply scale to our other schools?
Yes, and I'll tell you that Attendance Works is very generous in terms of saying, please feel free to use our materials to support other schools, just give us credit. So the answer is yes, it can be scaled. It was called a Communities of Practice, and this school year it involved 4 professional learning sessions, and then in between each professional learning session, there was a coaching call from one of the Attendance Works staff members, someone in central office leadership, and then the attendance team at the school. And I would say broadly, the main points that the attendance works emphasized throughout the course of the year. One was, we have to get away from anything punitive. It's about relationships and it's about figuring out the why and helping them. It was suggesting giving schools permission to not expend an inordinately large percentage of their attendance efforts towards a very small number of very highly absent students. Not that they would be ignored, but I mentioned CUSP students in my presentation. Sometimes if we spend all of our time working on those 5 families who we just can barely get to come to school at all, we don't have the time, energy, or capacity to work with that group of students who is hovering around 10%. So they basically gave permission and said, and it is a best practice to look at your students who are right around that chronic absenteeism level. And then they spent a lot of time talking to us about positive messaging and encouraging conversations with families. And so we know that parents want to hear from their teachers because that's who they know. So if they hear from, the counselor, who they probably know, or the personnel worker, who they may or may not know, that's one thing. But if they hear from their teacher, they know their child's teacher's name. So we want to engage our teachers in our attendance efforts, but we also know that we need to help them and provide scripts or coaching. And so a lot of the work that we did was around just providing, those encouraging message templates, and schools had a charge between 2 of the professional learning sessions to come up with a system or a strategy that you're going to use between the December and the April of how you're going to do those encouraging messages. And so they would do postcards, or they would coach their teachers and say, I want you to reach out to 3 families a week. Here are the things that you want to say. So it was a lot of the proactive pieces. And then we ended the year really having schools think about, and this is something that we're going to share as a system with schools, really concrete expectations for what's the summer work around attendance. Like, by the late June, you have a good idea of the students who are coming into your building next school year, and you have a very good idea of which students ended this school year chronically absent. What's the plan for outreach? What's the plan for engagement so that they can be encouraged to start the school year off better? And so 16 schools, were this elementary, middle, and high? Yes, it was in 2 clusters. So 2 high schools, 4 middle, and then whatever the 18 minus whatever that, or 16 whatever minus that is elementary schools. And you said aggregately 6.7%. Right. 7.2% drop in chronic absenteeism. Was that differentiated by level? It was, and it was the same as the system-wide data. It was much more on the elementary level. Okay. And so, and I do just want to emphasize one thing. So Mr. Said, who stepped out briefly, mentioned earlier, the students get in the system, they don't think there are any consequences for not showing up at school. I got up late, I missed the bus, I'm not going to go to school today. However, we know also, and this gets, I think, to what Mr. Monteleone was talking about as far as we got to make school engaging in a place that kids want to come, because our virtual academy attendance is also not great at all, and they don't have to go anywhere. And so, there's a conversation to be had there about what's happening with that, because that's also something on which we have spent a lot of money, and kids aren't even bothering to show up for that. Our job is governance, oversight, and accountability, and making the best use of the limited fiscal resources we have. And so we got to think about all of that kind of stuff. And I did want to mention as well, so interestingly, you mentioned, what can we do to encourage and incentivize students to come? Attendance works, don't be punitive. And you mentioned punishment breaks relationships, make it a soft handoff. But when you ask the students, they're always more punitive. They're like, you got to have, consequences, make it hurt, that kind of thing. When last Friday, I was at Seneca Valley Eagle, and it just happened to be prom day. And what they did at Seneca Valley was, if you didn't come to school that day, you couldn't go to prom. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many people in that school were like, we got a lot more kids here than we usually do. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, there's something. Athletics, productions, if so many students are involved in the arts and other extracurriculars, just making that observation.
one other question. So we're talking about sort of two facets of the same issue. One is kids that are absent, they're not coming to school. And then the other thing is kids that come to school, but they're not going to class. And doing that kind of root cause analysis, and I think my colleagues were getting to it. Are we triangulating when teacher X is absent, does the attendance rate of students in that class decline? And because the relationships matter. And looking at that kind of data, I think, is also, so if that is a trend that we see, instead of assuming, well, then we need to be working with schools to say, okay, this is likely going to be a consequence of a teacher being out, not just for a day, but if they're out for an extended period of time, we got to figure that out. We have to work around that presumption to make sure that we are presenting really solid, engaging content and classroom experiences, regardless of who's in that classroom that day. But also one of the things I wanted to observe, and I've heard it from a lot of students and others, that a very well enforced cell phone policy in a school reduces the presence of students walking the halls. Because a lot of students are using those cell phones to say, hey, meet me in front of blah, blah, blah. And so they get up, they leave class, and they're out. They're in the building, but they're not where they're supposed to be. And so, the more that we can really support schools in robustly enforcing that cell phone policy, because that's going to increase your engagement in your classrooms right there. But it's also going to keep kids in class. Maybe not all of them, but more of them. And the last question I had, we were talking about the evening school that we used to have. What about TAWS? I know TAWS was a resource that we had for our students who perhaps had to work half a day, and it was an opportunity for them to take care of their credit requirements without having to actually go to their home school. When I taught at Edison, I had students that were using TAWS, and they actually never attended their home high school because they were at Edison for half their day, and then they did the rest of their academic work through TAWS. Is that an option anymore?
I do not know the why, but TAWS disbanded, I don't know if it was at the beginning of this school year or the beginning of the school year before, but I don't know if it was a funding issue, but yeah, TAWS is no longer an option for our students.
Because that was a model that worked for some kids, especially those that did need to work. So, yeah, maybe we could find out.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't being utilized, then it's not a good use of resources, but anyway. Thank you.
Mrs. Evans.
Yeah, I had a question about pre-K. Did we show numbers a while back on absenteeism, half day versus full day? Was it more in half day? Because I just want us to, so pre-K is a high priority of mine. So I just want us to be careful and mindful that if it's half day, you're going to get some fluctuation. Because when it comes down to it, parents are choosing, are they going to work or send their pre-K student to school? And so we do want to be able to level the playing field for our earliest learners, and we'll do that when we have full day. So if it's half day, the whole blame thing, I think when it comes down to putting food on the table, versus having your 3 or 4 year go to school for half a day, some parents might choose to go to work, right? It's their livelihood, right? So I just want us to be cautious about that conversation, right? If it's not full day. So if it's full day kids in pre-K not coming to school, that's something else. But if we have data that shows there's a higher percentage of students being absent because it's a half day program, you can kind of understand that, right?
Ms. Hazel?
Yeah, so absolutely. That is the other reason the compulsory is one, and the half-day programming really does impact a parent's ability to get their child to and from school. So, but we can provide data specifically on the breakdown, but that we know that does have an impact.
Would you like that as a follow-up, or you're good with her answer?
I'm good with your answer, because I'm certain I know
Can we
that.
have that data if you have it? Thank you.
Yes, we do have it. Every little kid wants to get on the bus and come to school. That's what we're all excited about, going to school for the first time. So kids aren't coming to school because they don't want to be there.
And I wanted to say, not to minimize it as an issue at all, but I do want our pre-K colleagues to be recognized that the current number is down 8.5 percentage points from where it was last year. So that is still a lot of more work to do, but they've done some great work promoting that with their families.
Absolutely. Give them a shout out. I think
Mr. Vedavin?
So I have a question about open lunch and the data. That's one thing we have not talked about at all. And one of the things that I look at these chronic absentees high schools, one thing they have in common is they have open lunch. So I would like to know the impact, because, we're talking about, well, they're not showing up to this class. If that class is after open lunch, chances are that it might be because they didn't come back after they went out to lunch. So for me, I would like to know what is the relationship between open lunch, the data that it shows when kids get to school early, and then after lunch, and if there's a correlation with it. Because back in the day when we had open lunch, it was a privilege to go out to open lunch. It was something you earned, and it was something that it was given to you as a privilege. Not as a right, but you earned it, you've been in school, you were not absent, you didn't cut class, you're allowed to do open lunch. And if that is something, I have to agree with some of the stuff that Mr. Saeed said. Kids do want certain discipline, but if we're not gonna have anything, then what is, there's no carrot. There's nothing there. The other question I had, Mrs. Hazel, is when are you gonna have a focus group for the kids at CREA? Because I know you had focus groups with other kids, and they do have a high truancy rate, but I think it would be a good thing to meet with them and the administration and figure out why. And the last thing is, do we have any data on holding kids back when they are extremely truant? And because what I hear from parents, they're like, I beg the school to hold my kid back, because if we just keep passing them from one grade to the other, then chances are they're going to be part of that very high percent in high school. So what are we doing with that population that we know they're not ready academically to go on?
So I certainly can start. In terms of holding students back, it's typically not a large practice that we do in the school district. I think there's a body of research that shows that then it does often impact graduation rates as students get older. We do ask that schools, if there's a concern about a student, that they would have some type of meeting at the school with the parent, the teachers, the administrators, to discuss whether or not that's an appropriate move for that particular student. Do you want to add to that?
I was just going to add, but so we do have data also on that we monitor. So they submit when you retain a student, you have to submit a form. So we collect that, and there are times where we've seen higher rates and had to go out to the school and find out exactly what the practice is why are certain kids being retained, and if they're following the process that Ms. Hazel talked about.
And then the prayer question?
Yes. We will certainly follow up. I know that they received a survey and have adults going to get some feedback from them, but we will also follow up with a focus group for those students.
Some quick questions, and I'll try to make them rapid fire, and if you can make the responses quick too. I don't understand the pre-K compulsory issue. No one's telling parents this is optional. Like what makes the non-compulsory issue an issue? Right? I mean, no one's saying come if you want to. We are still trying to get them to come. Our attendance strategies are still being implemented at the pre-K level. So why do you say that the compulsory nature of it is an issue?
Only because in the state of Maryland, when you're between the age of 5 and 18, there is a compulsory attendance law. And for a whole host of reasons, we do not work with the state's attorney's office to seek to enforce that often at all. But it is, I think, understood that it's more understood that you must send your child to school when they're 5 years old and in kindergarten. And I think the perception is out there that pre-K is in some communities, and I think we're trying to change this, it is a introductory opportunity to get ready for kindergarten, it does not have the same level of daily attendance importance as once you get to kindergarten. And the pre-K team is trying very diligently to dispel that, I think.
Okay, thank you. The night school model, or the hybrid, I forget what you call it, Mr. Montiglione, is that dependent on the MBA resources? No.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on the model, right? It could be a hybrid model of in-person and asynchronous. It could be, there are modules, could utilize Edmentum. We visited with Fairfax to look at their model. There's different ways that you can do this, but not necessarily.
And then in terms of our antiquated models for teaching education, is there anything happening at the state or national level to make our teaching and learning more relevant to today's students?
So just to share one thing that we're doing in Montgomery County Public Schools, which I would encourage you if you get a chance to visit these schools. So Argyle, White Oak, and next year Sligo will have a Project Success is what it's called. If you may have heard of it. But essentially what you see as students matriculate through their school experience is that their attendance the chronic absenteeism goes higher. In those particular schools, you have teachers for multiple periods. So you build stronger relationships. You're not transitioning 7 times. So you have a teacher who will teach both reading and social studies, so you'll have that same teacher. And so you see attendance is better in those schools. There's been a lot of studies around just that project, but it's an innovative thing that's being done right now in Montgomery County. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And then I look forward to the conclusion of the grading and reporting work group, because I think there's an important correlation here. Something's got to change. I agree with Mr. Said. There's got to be some reason why you have to do it, positive or grade related or assessment related, but there's got to be a reason why you're going to class. As a parent, I have a 22-year-old and a 16-year-old, and what I allow is so different. Like I used to tell my oldest, unless you're throwing up or have a fever, you're going to school. Now it's so different, right? She needs a mental health day. She needs some teacher's not there, so why do I need to go to this class? It's just a sub. So I see that my parenting is much more relaxed, but again, there's no consequence if she doesn't go. She gets great grades. So why, and if she wasn't getting great grades, then again, there's no consequence to help me send her to go more regularly. So there's got to be something there. This is not enough. So, but I appreciate the presentation and the many different ways that you're trying to get at this very complex issue. I'm sitting here, my brain is kind of exploding with how complex this issue is, and I know there is no easy answer, but we got to get our students in the seats. So thank you so much for the presentation. Okay, we are now moving on to item number 8. This is just for informational purposes only. Item number 9. If we could get a motion to move 9.1 and 2 in block.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Ms. Wolf? New business items. We have 3 new business items coming forward from Mr. Said, Ms. Harris, Mrs. Londrowski. In the interest of time, I ask each of you to please keep it short so that we can get on with our meeting, because we still have much work to do. So, Mr. Said.
Yes, so I will try and keep this brief. I don't have a fantastic, amazing slide presentation like last time, so I guess we can keep this a little shorter here. So, this is about mental health, and this is about wellness in our schools. And so this is a resolution I'm bringing here today that if the conditions had aligned, I'd like to have brought a lot earlier in the year. circumstances change, all that, but I said, before my term finishes, this is something I want to address. So obviously we know that we're having a mental health crisis. And I think the conversation we just had about absenteeism is a reflection of that. And so when we're talking about ways that we can improve and lower the absenteeism rates, the way that we can support our students and their mental health, there's two sides to that. And there's the sides I talked about with attendance, which is like, pushing students to go to school, what happens if you don't? But there's also that the school needs to be accommodating students, and it needs to be accommodating for our staff. And we need to give students time in the school day. We need to give them targeted time for wellness. Something I always say now is I think staffing-wise, we're really solid on mental health. We have social workers, we have school psychologists, we have pupil personnel workers, but I think the only thing that's lacking is combining that with the school day, combining that part, mental health, with our academics. And so this is basically my way, and the way that a lot of students have expressed to me, is a way to combine those two things. So this resolution, to cut to the chase, does two things. The first is that next year, they will, and this is after a few edits, after speaking with board members, after speaking with, the unions and everything. So next year, they will study best practices at schools that currently have wellness models. Now, almost every middle school actually has some sort of wellness model, but they change drastically. And so some schools, I know what, I think Gaithersburg Middle School does, is they have a 30-minute lunch period and they cut it in half, and they say 15 minutes of, you can do any activity you want, 15 minutes of lunch. Roberto Clemente is an example of a different program where every day for the first 40 minutes of the day, I think it's around 40 minutes, students can do a wellness activity. If they're not doing one, they do a study hall. So there's a bunch of these different models, right? So something that I've always heard is it's not equitable. Where you live and what school you go to determines the wellness supports that you get in terms of schedule-oriented wellness support, and that's a huge problem. Some, especially when you look at the high school level, some high schools really don't have any program in place, and some, like Richard Montgomery, we get a day a month where teachers can't assign you work, and that's huge. So to kind of standardize it, the goal is next year, we will study some of the practices we're already doing at schools, at middle and high schools, and identify best practices, and then we'll bring that to the board, and we'll say, here are some models for best practices on schedule-oriented wellness in our schools. And then the following year, the hope is that, if the board agrees in moving forward, so I'm giving you all next year, because I sadly will not be here, I'll shed a tear, the ability and the agency to decide how we move forward. And so if you guys identify that you like the models there, that you think it's appropriate, that you've spoken with, school leaders, and that you want to move forward, the following year, the 2025 to 2026 school year, we will give all middle and high schools the option of which model they want to choose, but they must implement a wellness model. And it takes into account things that I've said here: time for students to complete school assignments, student access to teachers, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second part is something that I saw Howard County is currently doing. That's what inspired me to the second part. So the second thing is once every quarter, we add an additional wellness half day for students and staff. So Howard County started this after COVID, and they started it initially for their staff. So what they were hearing is their staff felt overwhelmed. They didn't feel like they haven't had enough breaks in the school year. And so what they did is they said, we'll give you a half day, except you're not expected to, work the rest of the day. You have time to go home. And something that I learned about after talking to a lot of the union presidents is that a lot of teachers just don't feel like they have the time to do things as basic as scheduled dentist appointments, doctor's appointments. And by giving them this time, it gives them time to plan for their personal livelihoods. Once a quarter, there is this half day, not just for staff, but for students as well. And I think a lot of students feel like, especially when we look at like March and May, 2 months where we have continual 5-day weeks, no breaks, students get overwhelmed. And they think, gosh, I don't know if I can make it another day. It's too hard. And so instead of missing a school day, they can say, I'm relying on this wellness half day that we're giving them. So again, this would not be for next year. This would be implemented in the following school year. In between that time, we'd survey our communities, our families, our staff members, our students. What are the best times of year to be able to implement this? And then hopefully in the next school year that we would implement this countywide.
Do you have a budget estimate of what that would cost to give a half day to staff 4 times a year?
So I don't have a budget estimate on me now, but it does say in here, we would continue to pay them. So I can get a budget estimate. That's no problem at all. I'll write that down. Yeah.
Do you have an idea, Mr. Hull? 4 half days a year, or
4 half days.
2 days?
It would be north of $10 million.
Yeah.
I mean, the other option, I guess, would be to reduce student time and not add days to the calendar.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Said or Mr. Said?
It would be $10 million to,
At an additional 4 half-days or 2 days to the
2 days
payroll?
for every one of our employees.
okay.
So if we do a 1 day for everybody, for all staff is around $10 million for all staff. So if we just did teachers, it would probably be, I don't know, 6 or 7 million per day.
But we're not
if we
losing
had-
any instructional time with a half-day, though.
You still have to have a substitute.
Can we not do this here and just get the information?
Yeah, let me just get the
That'd be great if we.
So, yeah, any questions? I'm open to any questions.
This is sitting on the table, correct?
Yeah, this is sitting on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just forgot
We
that
had-
this
yeah.
was the first time it was being introduced.
This is the first time, so yeah, we have time.
Any additional questions before we move on? Is there a motion?
So I guess I have to read the result. Or Elsie, do I read any of the result but when we get a second, or can we just do?
You should read the result.
Okay. All right. Resolved, the superintendent of schools in joint partnership with MCEA, MCAP, SEIU, students, and other key stakeholders shall identify strategies for incorporating wellness support into the school schedule, beginning with the study of best practices at a select few middle and high schools in the 2024 to 2025 school year. These best practices must be identified based on multiple different measures, including, but not limited to, time for students to complete school assignments, student access to teachers for academic support and guidance, mental health education and support for mental health staff, and other activities relating to wellness, mindfulness, and personal well-being. Be it further resolved, the superintendent of schools, in collaboration with the MCPS Office of District Operations, must establish 4 additional wellness half-days once every quarter of the school year for the purpose of student and staff wellness in the 2025 to 2026 school year calendar and beyond. All employees who would be normally paid for a full day of work on these wellness half-days shall not have their pay be altered. These half-days must be determined based on feedback from students, staff, and families, and must also take the following into consideration: upcoming exams for a majority of students, periods of the school year with continual full 5-day weeks, sections of the school year where student workload is extensive, ability of parents to provide childcare for their students. Be it further resolved, following the implementation of the wellness support study in the 2024 to 2025 school year, the superintendent, in collaboration with the Board of Education, will evaluate the effectiveness of the observed methods for possible system-wide implementation in all middle and high schools in the following school years. This implementation must give schools a wide range of options on how to implement the wellness time using multiple different models. So I think it just needs a second to sit on the table.
I'll do a second, just to have it sit on for conversation purposes, even though I'm not going to be able to support it.
Okay. Who's our next? Mrs. Majewski?
Yep. This one, I'm asking the board if we could do an emergency vote so that it didn't have to sit on the table for 2 weeks because it's effective. It's related to now. That's not the word I was looking for, but whatever. So this is about graduation ceremony, celebratory attire. We have a broad inconsistency between schools as to which schools allow their students to decorate their caps and which schools do not. So basically, all this would do is take what our current schools who do allow it to do and expand it to all of our schools. It would be, needed to be regulated to do it. So, yes. So the resolved is that the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to ensure that graduating students at all MCPS schools have the right to decorate their graduation caps within the parameters determined by the school principal or through a survey of graduating seniors beginning in the class of 2024.
Questions? Mrs.
I was going to second it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask if you've talked to principals and gotten their input about this.
I have, and I've gotten very mixed responses to it. But that's specifically why I included the determined by the school principal, the parameters being determined by the school principal. So if they've got certain aspects of what their concerns are, they don't have to include that in the.
I just have one question here. It says determined by the school principal or through a survey of graduating seniors beginning with this class, graduating class. It sounds like this is giving schools 2 options.
Yeah.
Either the principal decide or a survey decide. And I find that.
I do too. I have a problem with that, and I was actually going to recommend that we remove the survey of graduating seniors aspect, because I think that it would be lovely for principals to do a survey of graduating seniors, but I don't think it should be a requirement.
Dr. Felder?
So I wonder if you would consider allowing the committees. I understand each school, and Dr. Moran could speak to this probably better than I, but my understanding is that each school has a, I don't know what it's called, but a committee that makes decisions with regards to the graduation. So there are students and parents and staff members, et cetera. And that work has started a while ago, but to give them an opportunity to weigh in terms of making those decisions, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So I could take out the survey of graduating seniors and put in there, take out the or, and put in there what's the word? It's two things, thank you, in collaboration with their work groups.
Mr. Moran, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just to provide just context, so you understand the full picture of so there's 17 schools right now that have gone through this process and made the decision that they were not going to permit the students to decorate their caps. There's leftover 7-8 schools that decided that they would. So they've gone through that process, and it is mixed, and there are students who believe it's a distraction from the graduation ceremony. There are concerns out there regarding the use of this to display political things and the principal's ability and their team's ability to monitor, in some cases, upwards to almost 1,000 students' graduation caps the day of graduation. So I just want to kind of paint a picture for you of what.
But we have had discussion around this, and we do believe it is an equity issue. The question is, yeah, let's leave it at that. But we agree that it's an equity issue if you have 8 schools that are able to pull it off and 17 that do not.
And the students are paying for them. So it's their personal property, essentially. It'd be like saying you can't decorate your backpack to me.
Yeah, and I think, like Dr. Felder said, we're not, the language is not explicit, doesn't say, one way or the other. And so it is an equity issue. You have schools, across the street from one another where you're able to do it at one school and not at another school.
And I just, to clarify, because I understand the concerns about the political or the religious aspects or anything else that, whatever, might be, to me, part of the parameters that would be set by a principal would be that there would be no, it can't be, that nothing can be hurtful, harmful, political, whatever, however you want to put it. And then the principal would have the authority and the ability to remove it if they don't listen and they just walk out without a hat on.
I think the difficult part right now is deeming what is inappropriate and what is versus what is free speech, and that's kind of a delicate balance.
And we are 3 weeks away from graduation, so that.
First graduation is May 30th.
So if I could go, I think my only concern would be that maybe, I actually support this, but my only concern is maybe it would lead to another issue where, what if each school has its own parameters for what they allow? And then we then have another problem where it's like, oh, this school says you can put like a little bit of color on it. This school says you can draw anything as long as it's not a curse word or hateful. And then now you have even more of a problem. That's my only worry. I feel like it's one of those things where I don't know if you want to standardize something, but I don't know. It may create another issue within the same realm. But I do support giving students that right. I just want to know how we can balance that. I mean, I'm not against it, but I'm saying that's a potential concern.
So, and if I could just jump in with a point of order real quick, my understanding is, given that there needs to first be a unanimous vote to waive the requirement that it sit on the table for one session prior to there being a vote on the resolution itself.
Correct. Thank you. So I would like to move that we weigh in on this today and vote on this today as opposed to waiting 2 weeks.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. That's unanimous. Any further questions or discussion?
No, I was just going to say, so this is hard too. I have a senior, and I have an artist in my family who decorates caps, right? And so I think parents can also weigh in, but the compromise is, I know for our daughter was, so you wear your decorated cap afterwards and you take pictures, but when you're walking down the aisle, you have the plain one on. I just feel like there's a way that we could probably be flexible. I do know that we're in a heightened time right now where you just don't know what people are going to do, but at the same time, you know, our students have limited opportunities to celebrate this momentous occasion. So that's
where they're going,
yeah, I
what
know.
school they're going to, on.
So that's where I'm at on this.
And I would like
Actually,
to
have a cat being
respect the
decorated.
work that the committees and the principals have done at their individual schools rather than changing it last minute to implement the will of the board. I would like to respect the work that they have done and decisions that they have made so far.
I did have a question for you. Have there been issues with this at the schools that do allow it?
None that I'm aware of.
None that I was aware of either.
Okay, any other questions or are people ready to vote? Mrs. Rivera-Alvin.
This is really hard because we just had a huge thing about truancy and mental health and supporting our students and then being able to express and feel welcome, right? And here we are, all adults, right, making decisions that are going to. So I'll tell you, one of my kids decorated his cap at a school that did not allow it. Of course, he had to be my kid. And it was he put on he was a volunteer with one of the fire departments, and he proudly put the badge of where he volunteered and glue gun it, as we were leaving to graduation, and he wore it, and the principal saw it, and he was like, wow, that's really nice. And so, so they thought about it, that this is something maybe they can allow kids to do. So I am very torn on this because I really think young people, especially the young people that we saw today, how eloquent they are, I think they know kind of better sometimes. And I know sometimes we rule with fear of what could happen and fear that, but I think young people are more in tune with what is right and wrong. I know most of the caps that I have seen say, or either in Spanish, or thank you, mom and dad, thank you, familia, probably going terp, just, made it, finally, goodbye, sayonara. Like, I seen all these caps. And so I don't know, I think it's, this is a graduating class that has been through a lot too, because they started COVID online and they're, freshmen. So I just, I am a little bit, I think sometimes we side on the side of fear of what could happen rather than what might be best for our students.
Ms. Wolf?
I think I have to agree with Grace. I'm for this. Most of the schools that I have done graduations at, the kids have had their caps decorated, and I've never ever seen really any political issue. Now, I know we've had a rough year, and there's always the potential, but every graduation also has a teacher standing at the end of the row where the kids are going in, so they can look at the hat. So it's not like the principal has to try to police 500 or 600 kids, because a teacher is at the end of the row looking at the kids as they go in.
And I also just want to remind us that we already have a dress code. So, if someone were to violate, to me, this kind of just falls under our dress code. Whatever our dress code is for wearing T-shirts or expressing your personal opinions on your clothing, I think this just kind of falls under the same thing.
Ms. Yang?
Yes, I fully understand from a school perspective that this is late in the game, that graduation preparation has done a lot, and it's going to add to the complexity of our staff's work, right? It does take judgment. However, I also fully concur with some of my colleagues that we can't, because something, it has never happened. No data has shown us anything has happened. We have to trust that if our education has worked, that our students, super majority of them will make good judgment, and if they feel that we have a dress code that can help us guide them through the process. Every school, I know that they have a rehearsal, right? So during the rehearsal, give the staff member an opportunity to take a look at what they have, and that if there's any issue, that might be the opportunity to address some of the issue. That's where I'm at right now.
Okay. I mean, I still want to say that I think that each school community knows their population, and there's probably reasons why they chose to go this way, and I don't want to assume that I know those reasons and impose upon them, so. Any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay. All in favor of the resolution, help me out here with the amendment.
The amendment, yeah. It's a friendly amendment. So the resolved would read that the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to ensure that graduating students at all MCPS schools have the right to decorate their graduation caps within the parameters determined by the school principal in collaboration with their graduation committee, beginning with the class of 2024.
Motion to approve the amendment, is that right?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Okay. And now we need a motion to,
Okay, and I move this resolution.
Second.
all in favor, raise your hands. And that's Mr. Said, Ms. Evans, Mrs. Modrowski, Ms. Harris, Ms. Wolf, Ms. Rivera-Oven, and Ms. Yang. Against? Excel? The resolution passes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We have one more?
Yes. Yes, this resolution simply speaks to the fact that significant subject matter experts in this country have known for years and advocated for years about the unique power of school systems to help save lives that could be taken from gun violence, both intentional and unintentional, with a simple act of sharing information. And this is looking to the very powerful work that is done at Johns Hopkins in the Center for Gun Violence Solutions, the work that has been done by U.S. Department of Education Secretary Cardona when he, this past January, in a message to all superintendents, encouraged them to share this information about safe gun storage, trigger locks, throughout their school communities, and provided a toolkit and a template for school systems to use to disseminate that information. So school systems don't have to create, collate anything. They can simply use the toolkit that the U.S. Department of Education has created. Also, it recognizes the fact that based on the passage this year of HB 416, a bill that this board supported both last year when it didn't make it across the finish line, and this year, that all school systems in Maryland will be required, starting with the 25-26 school year, to disseminate information that is created by the Maryland Center for Safe Schools. And
Want to read the resolve?
No need to wait, if we could save lives now. Yes, I will read the resolves, and then I do have a brief friendly amendment. Resolved that the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to transmit to students and families the communication regarding safe gun storage developed by the U.S. Department of Education prior to the start of the 2024-2025 school year and annually thereafter. Be it further resolved that the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to make available on the Montgomery County Public Schools website resources from industry experts and community partners explaining the importance of secure gun storage and the legal obligations to protect minors from accessing guns which are not securely stored prior to the start of the 24-25 school year. Be it further resolved that the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to update the Student's Guide to Rights and Responsibilities in Montgomery County Public Schools to include this information about parents' legal obligations regarding the secure storage of guns prior to the start of the 24-25 school year. And be it further resolved that the board and the superintendent of schools shall continue to work with local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and other community partners to collaborate and increase efforts to inform MCPS parents of their obligations regarding the secure storage of guns in their homes.
Second. And the friendly amendment was?
The friendly amendment is to the first resolved paragraph that states that we will circulate the information provided by the U.S. Department of Education before the start of the 24-25 school year, and annually thereafter, that information or similar information provided by the Maryland Center for Safe Schools.
Second? Yep. I just want you to state out loud, the toolkit is just information. It's not anything that's required of the schools to do, correct?
It is information about Maryland and national safe storage laws. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that because
It is a simple sharing of
do
information.
something
Yes.
with.
Yes.
We also, don't we kind of already do a little bit, like, at least we used to, especially when the school shootings was, the kind of the topic of the day. We used to, at the beginning of each school year, give out, to every student, a thing on gun safety. So
COVID happened, I think we weren't able to do that
Right.
year.
I think it stopped.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I think we were trying.
Well, so to me, this brings that back, right? Which I'm supportive of.
And it's an easier, well, I think the practice in the past was somewhat erratic, as we're always talking about, fidelity throughout the system. So this is a resource because it's been pre-created and can be personalized to our school system that can be centrally shared without requiring each individual school to do anything.
My only concern, as I shared with you, is adding to the parent rights and responsibilities, just because where does it end? Should we also tell them to make sure that they buckle their seatbelts, or they have a smoke alarm, or is just, I would have 3 things that I would like to add to the parent rights and responsibilities, so.
And I would simply respond that we know that the number that gun violence is the leading cause of death for children and teenagers between the ages of 1 and 19 in the United States. So if we can share information about the leading cause of death in that age group, I think we should.
I'm all for sharing information. Where do we draw the line in terms of adding to the parents' rights and responsibilities book? So we have an amendment that we need to vote on. You seconded it? Okay. All in favor of the friendly amendment, please raise your hands. Okay, and that is unanimous.
So this is just to lay on the table. We're not voting today. Okay. Do we?
And I just, as I shared with Ms. Harris, we did this a couple of years ago. I think principals were asked to disseminate information about safe gun storage. Exactly. We got mixed reviews from principals. I don't think that we did it well. So I think it's worth checking back with them to see what worked and didn't work in that experience, if in fact we're going to pass this resolution next time.
And I think what we did, there was an organization, and we had testimony in 2021 from Rob Wilcox, who is the executive director of Everytown for Gun Safety, and he was suggesting that we partner with the Be Smart program to just ask the school system to allow them to share their resources and provide their resources to schools for distribution, and that just was not, we said we would do it, and it was very erratic.
So again, just point of order, we voted on the amendment, and we now need to conduct the vote. Have a motion and a second.
It has to lay on the table.
To lay it on the table.
It just needed a second to lay on the table.
It does.
We need a second for it to lay on the table. You don't have that yet.
Okay.
Mrs. Nadrowski seconds. Okay, so this
Thank
will
you.
lie on the table until our next board meeting. All righty, thank you for that. Item 10 is for informational purposes only. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, we need to go, read back into closed session.
Will we adjourn?
It's not in my notes, I don't say it.
The final.
We are continuing.
They are.
Yeah, so we have to adjourn and then we read
During the
ourselves into
open
closed
session.
session, is what I thought.
Got it, okay.
Yep, so move adjournment.
The final second in this boardroom to adjourn.
Yes.
All in favor to adjourn, please raise your hands. That's unanimous.
For now, our historian.
And now,
And now the final reading into closed session in this room. Can't get enough of it. I move that the board meet in closed session to address topics posted on the revised resolution for today's closed session and for the reasons and on the basis stated therein.
Second.
all in favor, raise your hands. We will now go into closed session.